Nearly 1,500 documented sightings of sea serpents appear in maritime logs from the 17th to the 19th centuries, yet not a single physical specimen has ever been recovered. This means that a vast archive of eyewitness testimony exists without a single piece of material evidence to confirm what the sailors actually saw. Let the day soften around you and find a comfortable place to rest your thoughts. We are going somewhere. There is time. The lights can stay dim. Those ancient mariners described long necks, humped backs, and serpentine heads rising from the water, details that match nothing in standard zoology. When science finally investigated these accounts, it discovered that many were misidentifications of real animals like the giant oarfish, a deep-sea fish that can exceed 30 feet in length and occasionally surfaces. Others turned out to be whale carcasses, giant squid, or even optical illusions created by waves. Yet the true answers are stranger than the legends. The creatures that inspired the myths are themselves living sea serpents, and their existence in the deep ocean is more mysterious than the stories sailors ever told. The deep ocean has always been a realm of mystery, and the stories sailors told of its inhabitants reflect a profound human need to understand the unknown. For centuries before the age of scientific exploration, the sea serpent was a creature of legend, woven into the cultural fabric of civilizations across the globe. These accounts, preserved in medieval manuscripts, ancient texts, and cartographic curiosities, offer a window into how our ancestors made sense of the vast, unpredictable waters that separated their worlds. In Norse mythology, the sea serpent Jormungandr, also known as the Midgard serpent, was a creature of cosmic scale. The Prose Edda, written by the Icelandic scholar Snorri Sturluson around 1220, describes Jormungandr as a serpent so immense that it encircles the entire world, biting its own tail. This creature was not merely a monster, but a fundamental force of the Norse cosmos, destined to face the god Thor at Ragnarok, the end of the world. The medieval source, the Völuspá, a poem from the Poetic Edda, echoes this vision, depicting the serpent rising from the ocean to bring chaos and destruction upon the gods. The kraken, another legendary sea beast from Norse and Nordic folklore, appears in later medieval and early modern sources. The Konungs Skuggja, or the King's Mirror, written in Norway around 1250, describes a sea monster called the Hafgufa, which is often interpreted as an early version of the kraken. This text, a didactic work for the son of King Haakon IV, includes a detailed account of a creature that hides in the depths, rising to the surface to create whirlpools that drag ships under. The 18th century naturalist Bishop Erik Pontoppidan later documented the kraken in his 1755 work, The Natural History of Norway, but the medieval roots are clear in the sagas. These narratives were not mere fantasies. They were efforts to catalog the real dangers of the North Atlantic, where giant squid and massive whales were known to disrupt fishing and travel. Ancient Greek scholars also recorded encounters with sea monsters, though their approach was more observational. Aristotle, in his History of Animals, written in the 4th century BCE, mentions a creature he calls the Ketos, a general term for large sea animals, including a mysterious giant octopus or squid that fishermen reported off the coast of Libya. He describes it as having a body as large as a ship and tentacles so long they could reach the mast, a description that aligns with later accounts of giant squids. Pliny the Elder, in his Natural History, completed around 77 CE, provides a more detailed account of a sea monster seen in the Gulf of Cadiz. He writes of a creature with a head like a serpent and a body covered in scales, capable of attacking ships and dragging men into the water. Pliny's work was a compilation of existing knowledge, but it became a standard reference for natural history in the medieval world, influencing how later generations imagined sea serpents. Medieval European cartography offers a visual record of these beliefs, with maps often adorned with sea monsters and warnings of danger. The phrase, "here be dragons," is a popular myth, but it appears on a few early maps, such as the Hunt Lennox globe, made around 1510, which includes the Latin HCSVNT Dracones, near the coast of Southeast Asia. This phrase did not necessarily mean literal dragons. It was a cartographic convention to indicate unknown or perilous regions, often associated with sea serpents and other mythical beasts. The Carta Marina, created by the Swedish cartographer Olaus Magnus in 1539, is a far more detailed example. This map of the Nordic countries is filled with dozens of sea monsters, including a giant serpent off the coast of Norway attacking a ship, with a coiled body and a long, dragon-like head. Olaus Magnus accompanied his map with a commentary, a description of the northern peoples, in which he described these creatures as real threats, based on reports from fishermen and sailors. The map was a blend of scientific observation and folklore, reflecting the medieval worldview where the sea was a place of both wonder and terror. In East Asia, sea dragon mythology has a long and documented history, distinct from European traditions. Chinese sources, such as the Shanhai Jing, or Classic of Mountains and Seas, compiled between the 4th century BCE and the 1st century CE, describe various sea dragons, or jiaolong, that control rivers and oceans. These creatures were often seen as deities, capable of bringing rain or causing floods, and they appear in coastal accounts from the Ming Dynasty. One documented example from the 16th century, recorded in the local gazetteer of Fujian province, describes a large serpentine creature seen off the coast during a storm, its body stretching across the horizon. Japanese mythology includes the umibozu, a sea spirit that appears as a dark, smooth shape on the water, sometimes with a serpentine form. The Nihon Shoki, an early Japanese chronicle from 720 CE, mentions a sea serpent called the wani, a dragon-like creature that attacks ships in the Sea of Japan. These accounts were not isolated. They were part of a broader cultural framework where the sea was a sacred and dangerous domain, inhabited by powerful beings that demanded respect. The frequency and consistency of sea serpent reports across cultures that had no contact with each other is a striking pattern. From the Norse sagas to Greek philosophy, from medieval maps to Chinese chronicles, the descriptions share common features: a long, serpentine body, often with multiple humps or coils, a head that resembles a horse or a dragon, and a tendency to rise from the depths in storms or near coastal waters. Even the Pacific Northwest indigenous peoples, though outside the scope of this section, have similar accounts of a sea serpent called the sisutl, a double-headed creature that appears in their art and oral traditions. These parallels cannot be explained by simple cultural diffusion, as the distances between these civilizations were vast, and the timelines of their reports often predate any known contact. For example, the Norse accounts from the 13th century share no known connection with the Chinese accounts from the same era, yet both describe a creature that is long, scaled, and capable of sinking ships. Scientifically, this consistency tells us that sailors were observing something real in the ocean, something that triggered a shared perceptual framework across human cultures. The human brain is wired to recognize patterns, especially in the shifting, chaotic environment of the sea. When a sailor sees a long, dark shape moving through the water, the mind naturally interprets it as a living creature, often a serpent or dragon, because that shape is familiar from terrestrial snakes and predators. The repeated descriptions of multiple humps, for example, likely correspond to the rolling motion of a whale's back as it surfaces, or the undulating body of a large fish or squid. The long neck reported in many sightings could be a misinterpretation of a giant squid's tentacles or the elongated body of an oarfish, a creature that can reach lengths of over 10 meters and is known to surface in distress. The fact that these reports cluster around specific regions, such as the North Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and the coastal waters of East Asia, suggests that sailors were encountering a limited set of large marine animals that were common in those areas. The cultural record also reveals that these sightings were not merely random. They were often recorded in times of hardship or exploration. The Norse sagas about Jormungandr emerged during the Viking Age, when seafarers were pushing into the North Atlantic, facing unknown waters and dangerous storms. The medieval maps that depicted sea monsters were created during the Age of Discovery, when European sailors were venturing into the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, encountering new species of whales and fish. The Chinese accounts of sea dragons often appear in the context of maritime trade, such as the voyages of Zheng He in the early 15th century, where his fleet of treasure ships traveled through the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean. In each case, the sea serpent became a symbol of the unknown, a way to explain the awe and fear that ocean travel inspired. The frequency of these reports, with hundreds of documented sightings from the 16th to the 19th centuries alone, underscores the persistence of the phenomenon. The Scottish naturalist Sir Andrew Smith collected over 100 accounts of sea serpents in the 19th century, many from sailors with no knowledge of earlier legends. This consistency, across time and space, is a powerful clue for modern science. It suggests that the human brain, when faced with ambiguous stimuli on the water, tends to construct a narrative of a serpentine monster, a narrative that is reinforced by cultural stories and passed down through generations. The cultural record, therefore, is not just a collection of myths, but a dataset of human observation, flawed but valuable, pointing toward a real and consistent source of those observations. The next section will explore what that source actually was, but for now, the ancient mariners' accounts stand as a testament to the ocean's enduring mystery. The ancient mariners of northern Europe left their own indelible mark on the sea serpent tradition. In the Norse sagas, the creature known as the Hafgufa, or sea mist, was described as a vast, whale-like entity that could rise from the depths and swallow ships whole. The 13th century Konungs Skugja, or King's Mirror, a Norwegian educational text, provides a detailed account of this beast, calling it a creature of immense size and deceptive stillness. Sailors in the North Atlantic feared that the Hafgufa would surface beneath their vessels, dragging them down into the abyss without warning. This legend persisted for centuries, blending with later accounts of the Kraken, a giant squid that was also interpreted as a sea serpent by some observers. Medieval European bestiaries codified the sea serpent as a distinct category of monster. The 12th century Physiologus and its later derivatives described the Serpens marinus as a creature of biblical proportions, often linked to the Leviathan of the Old Testament. The 16th century Swiss naturalist Conrad Gessner included a woodcut of a sea serpent in his Historia Animalium, showing a long, coiled serpent attacking a ship with multiple sailors. This image became iconic, copied and recopied across Europe, reinforcing the idea that such creatures were not merely mythical but documented in natural history. Gessner's work was based on reports from mariners he interviewed, many of whom claimed to have seen the beast with their own eyes. In the 17th century, the Danish bishop and historian Olaus Magnus published his Carta Marina and Historia de Gentibus Septentrionalibus, which included vivid illustrations of sea serpents in the waters around Scandinavia. Magnus described a serpent 200 feet long, with a mane of hair and fiery eyes, attacking ships off the coast of Norway. He drew on the testimonies of fishermen and sailors, stating that the creature was so massive it could coil around a ship's hull. His work became a primary source for later naturalists, influencing the Swedish scientist Carl Linnaeus, who included the sea serpent as Serpens marinus in the first edition of his Systema Naturae in 1735. Linnaeus later removed it, but the initial inclusion underscored the scientific credibility of these reports at the time. Across the Atlantic, indigenous peoples of the Americas also recorded encounters with serpentine beings in the water. The Haida and Tlingit of the Pacific Northwest told of the Sisiutl, a double-headed sea serpent that could bring good fortune or death. The Algonquian peoples of the Great Lakes spoke of the Mishipeshu, a horned water serpent that guarded the depths. These traditions were not simply myths, but were grounded in observations of the environment, as the rivers and coastal waters teemed with large fish, seals, and the occasional oarfish, which could be mistaken for a sea serpent. European explorers in the 16th and 17th centuries recorded these stories, often blending them with their own cultural expectations, creating a hybrid folklore that persisted for generations. In the 18th century, the French naturalist Pierre Denis de Montfort compiled accounts of sea serpents from sailors in the Caribbean and the Indian Ocean. He collected reports of creatures that matched the description of the giant squid, which he would later champion as a distinct species. One of his most famous cases was the 1761 sighting off the coast of Martinique, where a French corvette encountered a creature with tentacles that rose 30 feet above the water. Montfort's work was controversial, but it highlighted the intersection of cultural narrative and biological reality. The sea serpent in this context was not a single creature, but a category that included multiple species, each misidentified by mariners conditioned by centuries of stories. The 19th century saw an explosion of sea serpent reports, coinciding with the rise of global shipping and the expansion of scientific inquiry. The most famous of these was the 1817 sighting in Gloucester Harbor, Massachusetts. Dozens of witnesses, including a ship's captain and a town official, described a creature 60 to 100 feet long, with a head like a turtle and a body that moved in vertical undulations. The Linnaean Society of New England investigated the case, collecting sworn testimonies and even naming the creature Scoliophus atlanticus. Though later debunked as a case of multiple sightings of a large snake or a string of seals, the event became a template for future reports. It demonstrated how community consensus and cultural expectation could amplify a single ambiguous observation into a full-blown phenomenon. In the same decade, the British naval officer Captain Peter Heywood reported a sea serpent off the coast of Mozambique in 1818. Heywood was a respected figure, having served with Captain Bligh on the Bounty, and his account was published in the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society. He described a creature with a head the size of a horse and a body that rose in coils above the water. His report was taken seriously by scientists, including the naturalist Sir Joseph Banks, who noted that Heywood's credibility made the sighting difficult to dismiss. This pattern repeated across the century. Reputable sailors, naval officers, and even scientists themselves reported encounters that defied easy explanation. The 1848 sighting by the crew of HMS Daedalus off the coast of Africa is one of the most thoroughly documented. The officers and crew described a creature with a long neck, a head like a snake, and a body that moved with a steady, serpentine motion. The report was published in the Times and sparked a public debate that lasted for years. The British Admiralty, after investigation, concluded that the crew had likely seen a large sea lion or a giant squid, but the official explanation satisfied few. The Daedalus case became a touchstone for later researchers, who used it to argue that the sea serpent was a real but misidentified animal such as the oarfish or the elephant seal. In the Pacific, the Japanese had their own tradition of sea serpents, known as Tengu no Kujira, or goblin whales. The 18th century Japanese naturalist Kamo no Mabuchi recorded accounts of a creature that resembled a giant eel, with a horned head, appearing off the coast of Honshu. Japanese fishermen told of a being that could upend boats and consume entire catches, a story that echoed the Norse Hafgufa. These accounts were compiled in the Nihon Sankai Meibutsu Zue, an illustrated guide to the wonders of Japan, which included woodcuts of a creature with a serpentine body and a dragon-like head. The cultural link between sea serpents and dragons was strong in East Asia, where the dragon was a symbol of water and power, not necessarily a monster. The 19th century also saw the rise of the long-necked sea serpent, a subtype that became dominant in the Western imagination. The 1875 sighting off the coast of Newfoundland by the crew of the HMS Challenger is a notable example. The ship's officers described a creature with a long neck and a small head that rose from the water, moving in a way that suggested a living animal. The Challenger expedition was a scientific mission, and the crew were trained observers, making their report particularly credible. The sighting was later attributed to a giant squid or a sea lion, but the fact that experienced scientists saw something they could not identify reinforced the idea that the ocean held creatures beyond the known. The 1892 sighting of the SS Java off the coast of Australia added another layer to the record. The ship's captain and crew reported a creature with a body like a tree trunk, moving with a sinuous motion across the water. The report was published in the Sydney Morning Herald and sparked a flurry of correspondence from other sailors who had seen similar beings. This accumulation of sightings, each with its own specific details, created a dataset that was both consistent and contradictory. The consistency lay in the basic form, a long serpentine body moving in a wave-like motion. The contradictions lay in the details, the size, the color, the presence of a mane, the number of humps. These variations pointed to multiple possible sources, from giant squids to whales to unknown species. The cultural record of sea serpents is not a simple list of errors. It is a complex tapestry of human perception, shaped by geography, technology, and belief. A sailor in the 16th century with no knowledge of marine biology would interpret a giant squid or a breaching whale as a serpent. A sailor in the 19th century, with a better understanding of ocean life, might still see a serpent because his cultural expectations had not changed. The persistence of the sea serpent across cultures and centuries is a testament to the power of the human mind to find patterns in the ambiguous, to impose order on the chaos of the sea. The next section will explore what science has found, but for now, the ancient mariners' accounts stand as a testament to the ocean's enduring mystery. The Norse seafarers of the early medieval period carried with them a deep and visceral fear of the ocean's unseen inhabitants. In their sagas, the Midgard serpent, Jörmungandr, encircled the entire world, its body so vast that it could be mistaken for a chain of islands. This creature was not merely a monster, it was a cosmological force, representing the boundary between the known and the unknowable, the safe shores and the abyss. When Viking longships ventured into the North Atlantic, the crew would often recount sightings of a long, undulating shape that seemed to rise and fall with the swells, a creature they called the sea worm or hafgufa. The 13th century Norwegian text, Konungs Skugsja, or the King's Mirror, described a sea monster so large that it could swallow a ship whole, though its appearance was said to be rare and its true nature a matter of divine mystery. By the 16th century, European cartographers and naturalists were beginning to compile these oral traditions into illustrated maps and books. The Swedish ecclesiastic Olaus Magnus, in his 1555 work, A Description of the Northern Peoples, included a detailed woodcut of a sea serpent attacking a ship off the coast of Norway. The creature was depicted with a horse-like head, a long mane, and a body that coiled in multiple loops above the water, its eyes glowing with a malevolent intelligence. Magnus claimed that the serpent was over 200 feet long, that it would rise from the depths to seize sailors from the decks, and that its appearance foretold great storms or the death of a prince. This account was not a piece of fiction. Magnus had interviewed fishermen and gathered reports from the Archbishop of Nidaros, and he presented the serpent as a natural but dangerous part of the northern seas. His map, the Carta Marina, became a template for later sea serpent illustrations, establishing a visual language that would persist for centuries. The 18th century brought a new wave of documented encounters, now with the disciplined eyes of naval officers and colonial administrators. In 1734, the missionary Hans Egede, while exploring the coast of Greenland, reported a creature that he described as a most terrible sea monster. Egede's account, published in his journals, noted that the animal lifted its head high above the water, its body as thick as a ship's mast, and that it swam with a series of vertical undulations. He estimated its length at over 120 feet, and he saw it for several minutes before it submerged. Egede was a careful observer, and his drawing of the creature, though crude, showed a serpentine form with a long neck and a blunt head, lacking the mane that Magnus had described. This sighting was widely circulated in Europe, and it sparked a new interest in the question of whether such creatures were real or merely the product of frightened imaginations. The 19th century, the golden age of naval exploration, produced some of the most famous and detailed sea serpent accounts. On August 6, 1848, the crew of HMS Daedalus, a British Royal Navy frigate, encountered a creature off the coast of South Africa. Captain Peter McHugh reported that the animal was about 60 feet long, with a head like a snake and a long, undulating body. The officer of the watch, Lieutenant Edgar Drummond, observed it through a telescope and noted that it swam with a vertical motion, leaving a wake that was clearly visible. The creature was seen for nearly 20 minutes by the entire crew, and no one on board doubted its serpentine nature. The report was sent to the Admiralty and later published in the Times, causing a sensation. The Daedalus serpent was debated for decades, with naturalists arguing that it was a giant squid, a sea lion, or a previously unknown species of eel, but the sailors' testimonies remained consistent and unshaken. Across the Atlantic, the coastal waters of New England became a hotspot for sea serpent sightings in the early 19th century. In 1817, a creature was seen repeatedly in Gloucester Harbor, Massachusetts, and the local Linnaean Society appointed a committee to investigate. The committee collected dozens of eyewitness accounts, all describing a long, snake-like animal with a head the size of a horse, a dark brown back, and a series of humps that rose and fell as it moved. One witness, a fisherman named Matthew Gaffney, claimed to have seen the creature's head and neck elevated 10 feet above the water, and he estimated its total length at 80 feet. The committee published a report, complete with a scientific name, Scoliophus atlanticus, though the creature was never captured. The Gloucester serpent became a national story, inspiring poems, newspaper articles, and even a public debate in the Massachusetts legislature about whether a reward should be offered for its capture. The cultural record of sea serpents extends far beyond the European and American traditions. In the waters of the Indian Ocean, Arab sailors and merchants spoke of the tannin, a great sea dragon that could overturn dhows and devour entire crews. The 10th century Persian geographer Ibn Rusta described a creature that would rise from the depths at night, glowing with a phosphorescent light, and that could be deterred only by the recitation of sacred verses. In the Chinese tradition, the long or dragon was a benevolent and powerful being, but the sea dragons of the South China Sea were often depicted as dangerous, with long, serpentine bodies, scales, and the ability to summon storms. The 16th century Chinese maritime manual Shun Feng Xiang Song included warnings about a sea serpent of the southern isles, a creature that would coil around ships and drag them under. These accounts, though shaped by different cultural frameworks, all shared a common core: a long, undulating body that moved with an unnatural grace and a presence that inspired both awe and terror. The 17th and 18th centuries also saw the compilation of sea serpent accounts in the works of European naturalists. The Swiss physician and naturalist Conrad Gessner, in his Historiae Animalium of 1551, included a chapter on sea monsters, drawing from both classical sources and contemporary reports. He described a creature called the Great Sea Serpent that had been seen off the coast of Norway, with a head like a bull and a body covered in barnacles. The French naturalist Pierre Denis de Montfort, in his 1802 work Histoire naturelle des mollusques, argued that the sea serpent was actually a giant squid, a theory that was dismissed at the time but later gained traction. These early scientific attempts to classify the sea serpent were hampered by a lack of specimens, but they reflected a growing desire to reconcile the fantastic accounts with the emerging discipline of natural history. The 19th century also produced a number of large-scale sea serpent sightings that were reported in the press and debated by scientific societies. In 1875, the crew of the British schooner Pauline reported a creature off the coast of Portugal that was estimated to be over 100 feet long, with a head like a turtle and a body that moved in a series of vertical undulations. The captain, Peter Watkins, described the animal as having a dark brown back and a white belly, and he noted that it swam at a speed of about 10 knots. The sighting was published in the Zoologist magazine, and it was discussed by the British Association for the Advancement of Science. Similarly, in 1888, the crew of the steamer Umfuli sighted a sea serpent off the coast of West Africa, describing it as having a long neck, a small head, and a body that was covered in a series of loops. The captain, John Wills, estimated its length at 50 feet, and he noted that the creature emitted a loud hissing sound before diving. The persistence of these accounts across centuries and cultures is not a sign of mass delusion. It is a reflection of the human ability to see patterns in the ambiguous, to impose narrative on the chaotic. Every sailor who saw a sea serpent was looking at the same ocean, but they were also looking through the lens of their own time and place. The Norse saw a world serpent, a force of nature. The 18th century missionary saw a devilish beast, a symbol of the wild and unconverted. The 19th century naval officer saw a specimen, a challenge to the authority of natural history. The sea serpent is not a single creature. It is a collection of stories, each one shaped by the observer's expectations, fears, and hopes. And the ocean, vast and dark, provided the perfect canvas for these projections. The next section will explore what science has found. But for now, the ancient mariners' accounts stand as a testament to the ocean's enduring mystery. The sea serpent stories did not end with the age of sail. In the 19th century, as steamships crossed the Atlantic, the sightings continued with equal fervor, each one adding a new chapter to the growing legend. One of the most famous encounters occurred in August 1817, off the coast of Gloucester, Massachusetts. Hundreds of townspeople, including a minister and several respected ship captains, reported seeing a creature with a head like a rattlesnake, a body as thick as a barrel, and a series of humps that rose and fell as it moved. The local scientific society, the Linnaean Society of New England, even collected accounts and attempted to classify the animal, but no specimen was ever captured. The Gloucester sea serpent became a national sensation, printed in newspapers from Boston to New York, and it shaped the imagination of a young America still hungry for wonders of the natural world. A similar spectacle unfolded in the waters off the coast of Norway in 1734, when the missionary Hans Egede described a creature far more terrifying than any whale. Sailing near the coast of Greenland, Egede and his crew saw a monster with a long neck, a head that resembled a horse, and a body that rose high above the waves. The creature dove and then surfaced again, producing a violent churning of the sea. Egede's account was published in his missionary journals and later repeated in natural history texts, cementing the image of the sea serpent as a distinct, identifiable beast. His description influenced generations of European naturalists who debated whether the creature was a giant snake, a new species of whale, or something else entirely. In the Pacific, seafaring cultures of the Pacific Northwest had their own stories of the sea serpent, but they carried a different meaning. The indigenous peoples of the coast, from Alaska to Oregon, spoke of the Sisiotl, a powerful mythological being that appeared as a serpent with two heads and a central face. The Sisiutl was not a biological creature, but a spirit of transformation, dangerous, yet capable of bestowing supernatural power to those who showed respect. These accounts were not recorded in European ship logs, but they were transmitted orally across generations. When European explorers and traders arrived, they encountered these stories and sometimes misinterpreted them as evidence of a real animal lurking in the cold northern waters. The British naval vessel HMS Daedalus provided one of the most credible sightings of the mid-19th century. In August 1848, while sailing between the Cape of Good Hope and St. Helena, Captain Peter McHugh Hay and several officers observed a creature with a long neck, a head resembling a snake, and a mane of hair along its back. The creature appeared to be swimming at a steady speed, and the officers watched it for nearly 20 minutes. McHugh's report to the Admiralty was published in the Illustrated London News, sparking a heated debate among naturalists. Some argued that it was a giant seal, others a sea lion, but the officers insisted it was unlike any known animal. The Daedalus sighting remains one of the most cited examples of a sea serpent encounter in the age of steam. A different kind of story emerged from the cannibal islands of the South Pacific, where European missionaries often conflated local myths with their own theological fears. In 1824, the Reverend John Williams, a missionary in the Society Islands, described a creature that the natives called the Aitu, a sea serpent that could swallow a canoe whole. Williams, writing in his memoir, interpreted the beast as a manifestation of Satan, a dangerous force that kept the islanders in spiritual bondage. The local accounts, however, spoke of the Aitu as a guardian of certain reefs, a creature that was both feared and respected. The missionaries' lens transformed a cultural narrative into a demonic entity, a pattern repeated across the colonial world. In the Baltic Sea, the Swedish and Finnish sailors had their own name for the sea serpent, the havsfru or havsorm. An account from 1840 described a creature off the coast of Finland that was seen by the crew of the brig Fides. The head was flat and broad, like that of a cow, but the neck was slender and long, rising from a round body covered in dark scales. The creature swam in a series of loops, and the crew estimated its length at over 30 meters. The captain, a man named Lindqvist, drew a sketch of the animal, which was later published in a Swedish scientific journal. This sighting was taken seriously by the local community, as the waters of the Baltic were known for strange marine life, including the occasional giant jellyfish. The Japanese also recorded their own encounters, though they used different categories of description. In a 1917 account from the log of the freighter Kaiomaru, the captain reported seeing a creature with a long neck and a pair of humps moving against the current near the Bonin Islands. The ship's crew described the creature as having a skin like a turtle, but with a serpentine head. This sighting was reported in the Tokyo newspaper, but it was quickly dismissed by the Imperial Navy as a misidentification of a giant squid or a school of porpoises. Yet the crew remained adamant, and their account became part of the growing archive of Japanese sea serpent lore, blending traditional Shinto beliefs about water spirits with modern nautical observation. The Mediterranean Sea, with its ancient maritime history, had its own traditions. Greek sailors spoke of the Cetus, a sea monster that appeared in the stories of Perseus and Andromeda. By the 19th century, these myths had evolved into reports of a large serpentine creature seen off the coast of Sicily. In 1860, the crew of the Italian brig Procida reported a creature with a head like a dog and a long, coiled body. The sighting was investigated by the local bishop, who concluded that it was a natural phenomenon, perhaps a giant eel, but the fishermen of the area continued to warn of the beast. The Mediterranean sea serpent, though less famous than its Atlantic cousins, persisted in the folklore of coastal villages. In the Indian Ocean, the accounts of the sea serpent often merged with the legends of the Arabian Nights. The Omani sailors spoke of the Bahamut, a giant fish that supported the earth, but they also told of the Tinnin, a sea dragon that could capsize ships. In 1854, a British merchant vessel named the Bombay reported seeing a creature that matched the description of the Tinnin, a long, dark body with a crest of spines along the back. The captain, Robert Moffat, wrote in his journal that the creature's eyes glowed red in the afternoon sun and that it moved with a deliberate, slow motion. He did not fire upon it, fearing that it would attack the ship. The account was later published in a Calcutta newspaper and was used by missionaries to illustrate the wildness of the ocean. The coast of South America also contributed its share of sightings. In 1831, the crew of the Brazilian schooner Constancia reported a creature off the coast of Recife that had a head like a horse and a body covered in thick black scales. The creature was seen for 3 consecutive days, always at the same time of day, near the same reef. The local fishermen called it the cobra do mar, the sea snake, and they believed it was a guardian of the sunken treasure. The Constancia's captain, Juan da Silva, sketched the creature in his log, and the drawing was later copied by a visiting American naturalist. This sighting added to the growing body of evidence that seemed to suggest a widespread distribution of a single, unknown species. As the centuries passed, the sea serpent became a staple of maritime culture, a story that every sailor knew and every captain feared. The accounts were not limited to one nation or one ocean. From the Arctic to the Antarctic, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, the pattern was the same: a long, undulating body, a small head, and a series of loops or humps. The differences were in the details: the size of the head, the color of the skin, the presence of a mane or fins. These variations reflected the observer's own reference points, the animals they knew from their homeland. A British sailor might see a horse's head, a Norwegian might see a serpent's head, a Japanese might see a dragon's head. The sea serpent was a mirror, reflecting the local fauna and the cultural imagination. The persistence of these accounts across such diverse cultures demands an explanation. It is not enough to dismiss them as fantasy or deception. The sailors who reported these creatures were often experienced, sober, and reliable. They had no reason to lie, and they risked ridicule by speaking out. The fact that their stories share so many common features, despite their geographical and cultural separation, suggests that they were all describing something real, something that existed in the ocean. But what that something was, the ancient mariners could not know. They could only describe what they saw using the language and imagery of their time. The sea serpent was a placeholder, a name for a mystery that would not be solved by imagination alone. The ocean, after all, is a place of shadows and illusions. Waves can create the appearance of a serpentine body. Sunlight can distort the shape of a distant whale. Seaweed can float in patterns that mimic a spine. Yet the sailors of the past did not have the benefit of our modern understanding of optics and marine biology. They relied on their eyes and their instincts told them that something was out there. The ancient mariners called it a sea serpent. The missionary called it a devil. The naval officer called it a specimen. But in the end, they were all calling out to the same vast, dark, unknowable ocean. The ocean surface is a vast, shifting mirror that hides more than it reveals. From the low deck of a small wooden boat, the human eye is easily deceived by waves, shadows, and the strange forms that rise from below. For centuries, the stories of sea serpents were not born from imagination alone, but from real encounters with creatures that look nothing like the myths they inspired. The oarfish, Regalicus glesni, is the longest bony fish alive, reaching up to 11 meters in length. Its body is ribbon-like, silver with a dramatic red crest of long fin rays on its head, and its dorsal fin runs the entire length of its back. When an oarfish swims near the surface, it undulates its entire body vertically, creating a sinuous, serpentine motion that is unmistakable from a distance. From a small boat, a sailor seeing a long, glistening form twisting through the water might easily describe a sea serpent with a horse-like head and a mane of red hair. The oarfish's dorsal fin, when uplifted, resembles a spiky ridge, and its large eyes can appear to glow in dim light. Live sightings of oarfish are extremely rare because they normally dwell at depths of 200 to 1,000 meters, only coming to the surface when injured, dying, or disoriented by storms. A slow, floating oarfish near the surface looks like a wounded dragon, its body drifting in lazy coils, which perfectly matches the ancient descriptions of a sea serpent seen on the surface for only a few moments before vanishing. The giant squid, Architeuthis species, is another creature that has been mistaken for a sea serpent, but only when it is dying or dead at the surface. These animals live in the deep ocean, typically between 300 and 1,000 meters, and are rarely seen alive. When a giant squid is brought to the surface by currents or after a battle with a sperm whale, it is often half dead, with its long tentacles trailing limply behind its body. From a boat, the squid's mantle and head form a rounded mass, while the two long feeding tentacles, which can reach 10 meters or more, extend outward like a pair of thick, undulating ropes. A sailor seeing only the tentacles cutting through the water might interpret them as a single, long serpentine neck, especially if the body is partially submerged. The squid's large eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, can appear as dark patches on the water, and its arms, with their rows of suckers, look like a strange, writhing mane. The entire corpse, floating with its tentacles spread, creates a profile that is eerily similar to the classical sea serpent, with a large head and a long, winding body. The basking shark, Saturninus maximus, provides one of the most famous examples of how a dead animal can become a sea serpent legend. Basking sharks are the second largest fish, reaching up to 12 meters, and they feed on plankton near the surface. When a basking shark dies, its body decomposes in a very specific way. The shark's skeleton is made of cartilage, not bone, and the lower jaw and the gill arches often rot away first, leaving the skull and the long, slender vertebral column exposed. The remaining carcass can look remarkably like a plesiosaur, a long neck made of vertebrae, a small skull, and a long, tapering tail. The dorsal fin, which is large and triangular, also decomposes and can be mistaken for a strange hump or a series of fins. The most famous case is the Stronsay beast, found on the Orkney island of Stronsay in 1808. The carcass measured over 17 meters, with a long neck and a small head, and was initially declared a sea serpent. Later scientific analysis, including modern studies, concluded it was almost certainly a basking shark, its cartilage skeleton having collapsed into a serpentine shape. From a small boat, a floating basking shark carcass, with its spine exposed and its head detached, looks like a prehistoric monster, its shape changing with every wave. The frilled shark, Chlamydosalacus anguineus, is a living fossil that looks like a sea serpent all by itself. Its body is long and eel-like, reaching up to 2 meters, with a dark brown or gray color and 6 gill slits that form a frilled collar around its throat. Its head is flattened and blunt, and its mouth is lined with about 300 needle-sharp, 3-pronged teeth arranged in 25 rows. From a boat, a frilled shark caught by accident or seen near the surface appears as a dark, writhing snake with a head that opens into a terrifying, circular maw. Its undulating movement is pure serpentine, and its gill slits, when open, look like a ruffled mane. The frilled shark lives at depths of 200 to 1,500 meters, so it is rarely seen alive. When it is brought up by deep-sea trawlers, its appearance is so alien that it is often called a sea serpent in local news. A sailor seeing it thrashing on the surface would see a creature that matches the description of a sea serpent with a dragon-like head and a snake's body, complete with a collar of fins. The leatherback turtle, Dermoculus coriacea, is the largest turtle in the world, reaching up to 2 meters in length and weighing over 700 kilograms. Unlike other sea turtles, it has a leathery, not hard, shell, and its back is marked with 7 distinct ridges. From a small boat, a leatherback turtle swimming at the surface can look like a large, dark hump, and its flippers, which are long and powerful, can be mistaken for the limbs of a sea serpent. When the turtle surfaces to breathe, its head and neck rise above the water, and its long, curved beak can appear like a serpent's head. The turtle's body, when partially submerged, creates a series of undulating waves in the water, especially if it is swimming slowly. A sailor seeing a leatherback turtle from a distance, especially in rough seas, might interpret its movements as a single, long creature with a humped back and a snake-like head. The leatherback turtle is also known to travel in deep offshore waters, far from land, exactly where sea serpent sightings are most common. The whale shark, Rhynchodon typus, is the largest fish in the ocean, reaching up to 18 meters in length. Its body is massive and flattened, with a wide, blunt head, a large mouth, and a pattern of white spots and stripes on a dark blue or gray background. From a small boat, a whale shark swimming just below the surface looks like a long, dark shadow, its dorsal fin breaking the water like a sail. Its tail, which is large and crescent-shaped, can lash from side to side, creating a wake that suggests a serpentine body. The whale shark's mouth, up to 1.5 meters wide, is often open as it filters plankton, and from a distance this can look like a gaping serpentine maw. The long, tapering body of the whale shark, especially when seen from the side, resembles a giant sea serpent with a large head and a long, smooth body. Whale sharks are slow swimmers, often staying near the surface for hours, and their sheer size and shape would easily be described as a sea monster by a sailor unfamiliar with the species. Each of these creatures, when seen from the low perspective of a wooden boat, can transform into a sea serpent. The oarfish's sinuous body, the giant squid's trailing tentacles, the basking shark's decomposed skeleton, the frilled shark's eel-like form, the leatherback turtle's humped back, and the whale shark's massive shadow all share one thing. They are rarely seen clearly, and often only in fragments. The human mind, seeking pattern, assembles these fragments into a coherent monster. But even as science has identified these animals, one creature remains elusive, its sightings still unexplained by any known species. The oarfish, in particular, has been seen alive so rarely that its full behavior is unknown, and some scientists wonder if there are larger, deeper forms of this fish that have never been documented. That mystery lingers just below the surface, waiting for the next sailor to look over the side. Beyond the oarfish and the giant squid, the deep ocean harbors other rarely seen giants whose forms have been woven into sea serpent lore. The megamouth shark, a species only discovered in 1976 near the Hawaiian Islands, grows to over 5 meters in length and possesses a blunt, rounded head with an enormous mouth that can open nearly a meter wide. This filter feeder swims slowly through the depths, its mouth agape to capture plankton, and when it occasionally rises to the surface at night, its silhouette is utterly alien. A sailor glimpsing a megamouth shark from the deck of a ship might see a massive, dark shape with a gaping maw, easily interpreted as the head of a serpent rising from the water. The shark's body is soft and flabby, with a long, tapering tail that could be mistaken for a serpent's neck, especially when the creature swims with a gentle undulation. Its large, reflective eyes, adapted for dim light, would catch the moonlight and appear as glowing orbs, adding to the monster's menace. The megamouth shark is a deep-water species, typically found at depths between 120 and 1,000 meters, but it migrates vertically to follow its prey. When it ascends, it often does so slowly, breaking the surface with its dorsal fin, which can be nearly a meter tall. This fin, along with the shark's dark back, might be seen as a series of humps or a long, sinuous ridge. The species is known from only a few hundred specimens, and its behavior remains largely unobserved, so every sighting carries an air of mystery. Its mouth is lined with hundreds of tiny teeth, but it does not bite. Instead, it strains water through its gill rakers. Yet a witness who sees only the head and mouth would envision a predator capable of swallowing a boat whole. The megamouth shark's rarity and its bizarre appearance make it a perfect candidate for misidentification, a living fossil that bridges the gap between known science and ancient myth. Another creature that has fed the sea serpent narrative is the colossal squid, a deep-sea cephalopod that rivals the giant squid in size but possesses a more robust, muscular body. The colossal squid reaches lengths of up to 14 meters, with a mantle that is shorter and thicker than that of the giant squid, giving it a more serpentine profile when viewed from above. Its tentacles are armed with sharp, rotating hooks, capable of scarring the skin of sperm whales, its primary predator. When a colossal squid dies and rises to the surface, its body decomposes, releasing gases that cause it to float. A sailor encountering such a carcass would see a long, pale shape with trailing, rope-like appendages, easily described as a sea serpent with a swollen head and multiple coils. The hooks on the tentacles, when exposed, resemble a row of teeth along a serpent's body, adding to the illusion. The colossal squid lives in the cold, dark waters of the Southern Ocean, often at depths below 1,000 meters, and is rarely seen alive. Its eyes are the largest of any animal, up to 27 centimeters in diameter, and they would gleam in the dim light of the deep. If a colossal squid were to surface near a vessel, its massive eyes and undulating tentacles would create an image of a many-headed monster rising from the abyss. The squid's beak, a hard, parrot-like structure, can be over 5 centimeters in length, and when the carcass is partially decayed, the beak may protrude, resembling a serpent's head. The colossal squid's sheer size and alien morphology make it a prime candidate for legends of sea serpents that drag ships under the waves. Its existence was not confirmed until 1925, when a recovered beak was identified, and the first intact specimen was not captured until 1981, illustrating how long these creatures remained hidden from science. The giant Pacific octopus, though not a serpent, has contributed to sightings of multi-headed or multi-tentacled monsters with its sprawling arms and bulbous body. This species can have an arm span of over 6 meters and weigh up to 600 kilograms, making it the largest octopus in the world. Its body is soft and flexible, capable of squeezing through tiny openings, and its skin can change color and texture in seconds, allowing it to blend into rocky reefs or appear as a dark, formless mass. When a giant Pacific octopus crawls across the seafloor or extends its arms to the surface, its long, sinuous limbs can be mistaken for a serpent's body or multiple snakes writhing together. The octopus's large, intelligent eyes with horizontal pupils give it a distinctly alien expression, and a brief glimpse of such a creature breaking the water would be enough to fuel a sailor's terror. The giant Pacific octopus is a deep-sea dweller, found in the North Pacific from California to Japan, at depths of up to 2,000 meters. It is a solitary hunter, feeding on crabs, clams, and small fish, and it often hides in dens among rocks or kelp. When it surfaces, perhaps due to an injury or a storm, its 8 arms may be seen separately, creating the illusion of a many-headed serpent. The octopus's arms are lined with hundreds of suction cups, each capable of grabbing and holding prey, and when the arms are retracted, the body appears as a large, rounded head. A historical account from 1896 described a giant octopus washed ashore in Florida with a body that weighed several tons, though it was later identified as a whale carcass. The giant Pacific octopus remains a rare sight at the surface, and its elusive nature adds to the mystery of the sea serpent. The ocean sunfish, or mola mola, is one of the heaviest bony fish in the world, weighing up to 2,300 kilograms and reaching over 3 meters in length. Its body is flattened laterally, with a tall dorsal fin and a rounded tail fin that gives it a truncated, disc-like shape. When the sunfish basks at the surface, it often lies on its side, exposing its large silver body and a single tall dorsal fin that can be mistaken for a shark's fin or a serpent's hump. The sunfish's head is small and blunt, with a tiny mouth, and its eyes are large and dark. A sailor, seeing only the dorsal fin and the rounded body, might imagine a creature with a long neck and a humped back, slowly moving through the water. The sunfish's habit of floating near the surface, sometimes for hours, makes it a common sight for sailors, yet its bizarre shape leads to frequent misidentification. The sunfish is a pelagic species, found in tropical and temperate oceans worldwide, and it feeds on jellyfish, small fish, and plankton. Its skin is thick and leathery, often covered with parasites, and its body can appear gray, silver, or even white in sunlight. When a sunfish is seen from a distance, its dorsal fin alone can rise a meter above the water, resembling the back of a sea serpent. The sunfish produces more eggs than any other vertebrate, up to 300 million at a time, and its young are tiny, spiky, and completely unlike the adults. This drastic transformation adds to the sunfish's reputation as a strange, otherworldly creature. In some accounts, sunfish have been described as sea devils or giant sunfish monsters, their large, flat bodies evoking images of a serpent's head or a drowned animal. The ribbonfish, also known as the king of the herrings or Trichopteris, is a deep-sea fish with a long, compressed body that can reach up to 3 meters in length. Its body is silver and iridescent, with a bright red dorsal fin that runs the length of its back, and its tail fin is small and forked. The ribbonfish swims in an undulating serpentine motion, and its long, slender shape is easily mistaken for a sea serpent. When a ribbonfish is washed ashore after a storm, its body can appear as a coiled snake, with its red fin resembling a mane or a crest. The species is rarely seen alive, as it lives at depths of 200 to 1,000 meters, and its body is fragile, often breaking apart when caught. A sailor who sights a ribbonfish at the surface might see a long silver line moving through the water, with a flash of red, and interpret it as a serpent with a fiery mane. The ribbonfish belongs to the order Lampriformes, which also includes the oarfish, and it shares many of the same characteristics that lead to sea serpent stories. Its large eyes are adapted to low light, and its mouth is small with tiny teeth, but the overall shape is unmistakably serpentine. The ribbonfish's dorsal fin is composed of long, soft rays that can be raised or lowered, and when raised, it creates a crest along the back. Some species of ribbonfish have a forked tail that can be mistaken for a serpent's head, especially when the fish is seen from above. The ribbonfish is a rare visitor to the surface, and its appearances are often linked to seismic events or changes in water temperature, adding to the mystery. In Japanese folklore, the ribbonfish is called the messenger from the sea god and is believed to foretell earthquakes. The lancetfish, or Alepisaurus, is a deep-sea predator with a long, slender body that can reach 2 meters in length. Its body is covered in small, rough scales, and it has a large, sail-like dorsal fin that can be raised or lowered. The lancetfish has a large mouth filled with sharp, fang-like teeth, and its eyes are large and luminous. When it swims near the surface, its dorsal fin can break the water, resembling a serpent's fin or a mane. The lancetfish's body is often a silvery blue or green, and it can be bioluminescent, emitting a faint glow in the dark. A sailor seeing a lancetfish at night would see a glowing serpentine form with a row of lights along its side, easily interpreted as a magical or monstrous creature. The lancetfish is a voracious predator, feeding on fish, squid, and crustaceans, and its aggressive nature adds to the fear it inspires. The lancetfish is found in all oceans, typically at depths of 200 to 1,000 meters, but it migrates to the surface at night to feed. Its body is long and compressed with a tapering tail, and its dorsal fin is supported by a series of spines that can be seen as a crest. The lancetfish's teeth are so large that they prevent the mouth from closing completely, giving it a permanent, snarling expression. This appearance, combined with its size and speed, makes it a likely candidate for sea serpent sightings, especially in accounts that describe a creature with a horse-like head and a row of spikes. The lancetfish is also known to strand on beaches after storms, and its strange, almost dragon-like form has been documented in reports of mysterious sea monsters. Its scientific name, Alepisaurus, means scaleless lizard, a nod to its reptilian appearance. Each of these creatures, from the megamouth shark to the lancetfish, shares a common thread. They are rarely seen intact, and when they are, their bodies are often fragmented, decomposed, or partially hidden by water. The human eye, trained to see patterns, stitches these fragments into a coherent monster. The ocean's depths are vast and largely unexplored, and every year brings new species to light, reminding us that the line between myth and science is thin. The sea serpent, once a fixture of sailors' journals, has become a scientific puzzle, with each piece solved by a known animal. Yet the mystery persists, because the deep ocean still holds creatures that have never been seen, let alone described. The stories of old, passed down through generations, are not lies but interpretations, and the truth is stranger than any myth. The deep ocean remains a realm where light fades into absolute darkness, and the creatures that dwell there have evolved shapes and behaviors that defy terrestrial expectation. When a dead or dying specimen surfaces, it often arrives in a state of partial decay, its features distorted by pressure changes and scavenger activity. The human mind, seeking order, interprets these partial remains as the limbs of a single monstrous animal, when in truth they belong to a species that is merely unfamiliar. One of the most celebrated examples is the giant squid, Architeuthis dux, a creature that haunted maritime folklore for centuries before science confirmed its existence. The giant squid can reach lengths of 12 meters or more, with eyes the size of dinner plates and tentacles lined with serrated suckers. When a giant squid carcass washes ashore, its tentacles may appear as a tangled mass of serpentine appendages, easily mistaken for the coils of a sea serpent. The first confirmed specimen was collected in 1870 off the coast of Newfoundland, but sailors had long reported tentacled monsters attacking ships, a tale that likely stems from encounters with living giant squid near the surface. These animals are known to inhabit all the world's oceans, descending to depths of over 1,000 meters, and they occasionally venture into shallower waters, perhaps following prey or disoriented by currents. The colossal squid, Mesonicoteuthis hamiltoni, is even larger and more robust than its giant cousin, with hooked tentacles that can inflict serious wounds. Found primarily in the Southern Ocean, this species has been documented in the stomachs of sperm whales, which bear circular scars from the squid's suckers. A full-grown colossal squid may weigh over 500 kilograms, and its body is mantled in a thick gelatinous flesh that resists decomposition. When a colossal squid carcass is sighted at sea, the mantle and arms can appear as a single sinuous form, while the beak and eyes remain eerily intact. Such sightings, particularly in the remote waters of the Antarctic, have contributed to legends of sea monsters with hooked beaks and ravenous appetites. Another prime candidate for sea serpent sightings is the oarfish, Regalecus glesne, a species that holds the record for the longest bony fish alive. Oarfish can exceed 11 meters in length, with a slender ribbon-like body and a prominent red crest on the head. They are known to inhabit the mesopelagic zone, typically between 200 and 1,000 meters deep, but they occasionally surface when sick or dying. The sight of an oarfish floating near the surface, undulating gently, has been interpreted as a sea serpent with a horse-like mane, especially when the crest is visible. Historical accounts from the 19th century describe oarfish as great sea serpents with a row of spikes along the back, which corresponds to the oarfish's long dorsal fin. The oarfish's habit of swimming vertically, with its head pointing upward, may also contribute to the impression of a tall, slender neck rising from the water. When seen from a distance, the body can appear segmented as the sunlight catches the silvery scales and patches. In 1996, a group of U.S. Navy SEALs training off the coast of California reported a 30-foot serpentine creature, which was later identified as a giant oarfish. The animal's elongated form and undulating motion are perfectly suited to the deep ocean, where it feeds on plankton and small crustaceans, but to the unaided eye, it looks like a creature from a myth. The basking shark, Cedorhynus maximus, is another large pelagic species that has been mistaken for a sea serpent. These sharks can grow to over 10 meters in length, and they are often seen at the surface, filtering plankton with their enormous mouths. When a basking shark dies, its body decomposes in a distinctive way. The lower jaw and gill arches often detach first, leaving the spine and upper jaw to resemble a long, serpentine neck. The dorsal fin, which may be prominent, can appear as a series of humps or ridges along the back. In the 19th century, a famous sea serpent sighting off the coast of Massachusetts was later attributed to a decomposing basking shark, with the description of a horse-like head, matching the shark's snout and upper jaw. The basking shark's behavior also contributes to confusion. These sharks occasionally swim in a line, with their dorsal fins breaking the surface in sequence, creating the illusion of a single, undulating creature. In 1977, a Japanese fishing trawler caught a mysterious carcass off New Zealand, which was initially hailed as a plesiosaur. Subsequent analysis revealed it to be a decomposed basking shark, with the rotting flesh and cartilage forming a long neck and flipper-like appendages. The incident underscores how easily decomposition can transform a familiar animal into a monster. The frilled shark, Chlamydocelicus anguineus, is a deep-sea species that looks like a living fossil, with a long, eel-like body and 6 pairs of gill slits that are not fully separated. It can reach lengths of 2 meters, and its mouth is filled with multiple rows of teeth, each shaped like a 3-pronged fork. The frilled shark is rarely seen alive, as it inhabits depths of up to 1,000 meters, but it occasionally surfaces in fishing nets. When it does, its appearance is so alien that it has been called a sea serpent in local news reports. The frilled shark's body is covered in dark brown skin, and its gill slits give it a frilled, almost ruffled appearance, which matches descriptions of a serpent with a mane. The goblin shark, Mitsukurina ostoni, is another deep-sea oddity, with a long, flattened snout and a protruding jaw that can be extended to capture prey. Its body is pinkish-white due to the visibility of blood vessels beneath the skin, and it can grow to over 3 meters. When a goblin shark is caught or stranded, its elongated snout and slender body are often mistaken for a serpent's head and neck. The goblin shark's jaw, when extended, resembles a beak, and its teeth are thin and fang-like. This species inhabits the continental slopes of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, and its rarity makes it a prime candidate for cryptic sightings. The siphonophore, Priadubia, is a colonial organism that can reach lengths of 40 meters or more, making it one of the longest animals in the ocean. It consists of a chain of specialized individual zooids, each with a specific function, such as swimming, feeding, or reproduction. The entire colony drifts through the deep ocean, trailing a long, transparent stem that can be mistaken for a serpent's body. When a siphonophore is caught in a net or washed ashore, the individual zooids may separate, appearing as a tangle of gelatinous tendrils. Historical accounts of sea serpents with a glowing, translucent body may refer to bioluminescent siphonophores, which emit a blue-green light when disturbed. The lion's mane jellyfish, Cyanea capillata is the largest known species of jellyfish, with a bell that can exceed 2 meters in diameter and tentacles that can trail for over 30 meters. Its tentacles are divided into 8 distinct clusters, each containing hundreds of fine, stinging threads. When a lion's mane jellyfish is seen at the surface, its tentacles can appear as a single writhing mass, especially in rough seas. The bell itself may be mistaken for a head, and the tentacles for a serpent's tail. In 2010, a large lion's mane jellyfish was reported off the coast of Maine, with witnesses describing a giant squid-like creature that later turned out to be a jellyfish. The lion's mane jellyfish is found in cold northern waters, and its blooms are increasingly common due to climate change. The giant Pacific octopus, Enteroctopus duflini, is the largest species of octopus, with an arm span that can reach 6 meters and a weight of up to 50 kilograms. Its body is soft and flexible, capable of squeezing through small openings, and its arms are covered in hundreds of suction cups. When a giant octopus is seen at the surface, its arms can appear as separate serpentine forms, especially if it is swimming or floating. The octopus's ability to change color and texture adds to its mystique, as it can appear to be a creature with multiple heads or a single undulating mass. In 2006, a fisherman off the coast of Washington reported a sea serpent with tentacles, which was later identified as a giant Pacific octopus that had been entangled in fishing gear. The ribbon worm, or proboscis worm, belongs to the phylum Nemertea, and some species can reach lengths of over 30 meters. The longest known specimen, Lineus longissimus, was found in the North Sea and measured 55 meters when fully extended. These worms are thin, slender, and highly elastic, capable of contracting and stretching. When a ribbon worm is washed ashore, its body can appear as a long orange or brown strand, often mistaken for a sea serpent. The worm's proboscis, which it uses to capture prey, can be extended and retracted, adding to the impression of a living, moving monster. Historical accounts of sea serpents in the English Channel may be attributed to ribbon worms, which are known to strand after storms. The giant isopod, Bathynomus giganteus, is a deep-sea crustacean that can reach a length of over 40 centimeters, with a flattened, segmented body and 7 pairs of legs. When a giant isopod is caught in a trawl, its appearance is so strange that it has been called a sea monster in some reports. Its body is covered in a hard exoskeleton, and its eyes are large and compound. The giant isopod is a scavenger, feeding on dead whales and other carcasses on the seafloor. While it is not typically mistaken for a serpent, its segmented body and armored appearance have contributed to descriptions of sea dragons or sea centipedes. The deep-sea dragonfish, such as those in the family Stomidae, are small but fearsome predators, with bioluminescent photophores along their bodies and a long, fang-like lower jaw. Some species, like the black dragonfish, Ideacanthus atlanticus, have a slender, eel-like body that can reach a length of 40 centimeters. When a dragonfish is seen at the surface, its bioluminescent patterns can create the illusion of a glowing serpent. The dragonfish's photophores are used to attract prey and communicate with mates, but to a sailor at night, the flashing lights might appear as the eyes or scales of a sea monster. These creatures inhabit the mesopelagic zone, and their vertical migrations bring them closer to the surface at night, increasing the chance of encounter. The pelagic sea cucumber, Enypniastes eximia, is a deep-sea holothurian that swims rather than crawling on the seafloor. It has a transparent body and a row of jelly-like fins, and it can grow to a length of 25 centimeters. When it swims, it resembles a glowing, translucent worm, and its bioluminescent displays have been captured on deep-sea cameras. In the 19th century, sailors occasionally reported seeing glowing serpents in the water, which may have been large aggregations of swimming sea cucumbers. The pelagic sea cucumber is found in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, at depths of over 1,000 meters, and it is rarely seen by humans. The whale carcass itself, when it falls to the seafloor, becomes a temporary ecosystem that attracts scavengers from across the ocean. But when a whale carcass floats at the surface, it can be mistaken for a sea serpent. The decomposition process often causes the whale's blubber to expand and the bones to protrude, creating a shape that resembles a long serpentine body. In 2012, a large floating mass off the coast of Scotland was reported as a sea monster. but examination revealed it to be a decomposing humpback whale. The skeleton, with the ribs exposed, looked like a series of legs or spines, and the missing lower jaw left a gap that resembled a gaping mouth. The deep ocean is a vast, dark world that we have only begun to explore. Each year, new species are discovered, and many of them are bizarre and unfamiliar. The giant squid was once a myth. The oarfish was once a legend. The stories of sea serpents are not lies, but the natural result of encountering the unknown. When a sailor sees a long, dark shape in the water, he does not know that it is a basking shark, an oarfish, or a decaying whale. He sees a pattern, and he names it. The science of the deep ocean is a process of untangling those patterns, but the mystery remains. Every new specimen, every new species, reminds us that the line between myth and reality is drawn by the limits of our knowledge. The sea serpent, as a creature of the imagination, will always exist because the deep ocean holds secrets that we have not yet solved. In the 18th century, the Swedish naturalist Carl Linnaeus sought to impose order upon the living world through his monumental work, Systema Naturae. When he first published the 10th edition in 1758, Linnaeus included a creature he called Microcosmus marinus, a sea serpent that he listed among the great whales. This decision reflected the authority of ancient and medieval texts, as well as the persistent reports from mariners returning from distant waters. Yet within a few years, Linnaeus himself grew uneasy with the inclusion. By the time of the 12th edition in 1766, he had removed the sea serpent from his system, relegating it to the realm of fable and misidentification. This early act of scientific self-correction set a pattern for the centuries to come. The pendulum would swing between credulity and skepticism, never quite settling in the middle. The 19th century witnessed the rise of natural history as a rigorous discipline, with museums, learned societies, and scientific journals demanding verifiable evidence. Sailor reports, once the primary source of knowledge about the sea, now faced intense scrutiny. The problem was that these accounts were often vivid, detailed, and consistent across oceans and decades, yet they remained stubbornly second-hand. A captain might describe a long serpentine body with a horse-like head and a mane, but no specimen ever washed ashore, no skeleton was ever collected, and no photograph ever captured the beast. Naturalists such as Thomas Henry Huxley and Richard Owen grappled with the challenge, attempting to separate genuine observations from exaggeration, optical illusion, or outright fabrication. The sea serpent became a test case for the limits of anecdotal evidence in an age that increasingly demanded material proof. Nowhere was this tension more evident than in the waters off the Pacific Northwest, where a creature known as Cadborosaurus, or caddy, had been sighted for decades. The first published report came in 1933 from a group of boaters near Vancouver Island, who described a 20-foot serpent with a camel-like head and a series of humps. Over the following years, hundreds of witnesses stepped forward, including fishermen, ferry captains, and even a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer. The sightings were so consistent that in 1937, a local newspaper offered a reward for the capture of the animal. Scientists from the British Columbia Provincial Museum and the University of British Columbia took the reports seriously, compiling dossiers, interviewing witnesses, and publishing analyses. Yet no definitive specimen ever materialized, and the creature remained a ghost in the archives, a mystery that teased the boundaries of scientific acceptance. The most dramatic episode in the scientific investigation of sea serpents occurred in 1977, off the coast of New Zealand. The Japanese fishing trawler Zuiyomaru hauled up a massive rotting carcass from a depth of 300 meters, entangled in its nets. The crew was horrified and fascinated by the creature, which measured about 10 meters long and possessed a long neck, a small head, and 4 large flippers. The ship's captain, fearing that the decomposing flesh would contaminate his catch, ordered the carcass thrown back into the sea after taking photographs and a few tissue samples. When the images reached Japan, the nation erupted in speculation. Some scientists, including those from the National Science Museum in Tokyo, tentatively identified the remains as a plesiosaur, a prehistoric marine reptile thought to have been extinct for 65 million years. The media dubbed it the modern Nessie, and the scientific community braced for a paradigm shift. But the story did not end with a resurrection of the dinosaurs. A careful analysis of the photographs, combined with the morphological details of the skeleton and the flippers, led to a different conclusion. The prominent marine biologist Leighton Taylor, along with Japanese researchers, demonstrated that the carcass was almost certainly a decomposing basking shark. The basking shark, a filter-feeding giant that can reach 12 meters in length, undergoes a peculiar pattern of decay. When it dies, the lower jaw and gill arches often fall away first, leaving the exposed skull and a long, slender spine that resembles a neck. The shark's large pectoral fins, once decomposed, look like flippers, and the trailing tail can be mistaken for a serpentine body. The Zuyomaru incident became a textbook case of how a known animal, under the right conditions of decay, can produce a plausible sea serpent. The lesson was clear. The ocean is full of strange transformations, but they are transformations of the real, not the mythical. Parallel to these investigations, another creature of the deep was quietly making its journey from legend to confirmed species. The giant squid had haunted the imaginations of sailors for centuries, appearing in tales of krakens and sea monsters that dragged ships to the bottom. Aristotle had written of large squids, and Pliny the Elder described a creature with arms 30 feet long. Yet for all the stories, no intact specimen had ever been studied by science. In the 19th century, occasional strandings and dead specimens washed ashore, providing glimpses of the animal's anatomy, but its behavior and habitat remained a mystery. The giant squid lived in the deep ocean, beyond the reach of nets and divers, and it seemed content to remain a phantom. The breakthrough came in 2004, when the Japanese marine biologist Tsunemi Kubodera and his team achieved what generations of naturalists had failed to do. Working from a research vessel near the Ogasawara Islands, they deployed a baited camera system at a depth of 900 meters. After several attempts, the camera captured a series of still images of a live giant squid, Architeuthis dux, in its natural habitat. The photographs showed a creature with long, tentacular arms, a large head, and two enormous eyes slowly approaching the bait. It was the first time a human being had seen a giant squid alive in the wild. The images were published in the journal Proceedings of the Royal Society B and confirmed without doubt that the legendary kraken was a biological reality. The giant squid had crossed the threshold from myth to science, not through a carcass or a tooth, but through a patient, methodical, and technologically sophisticated observation. The story of the giant squid's confirmation does not erase the mystery of the sea serpent, but it does illuminate the path that science must follow. The lesson is that the ocean, with its vast depths and unexplored trenches, may still harbor creatures that are unknown to science. The giant squid was once a sea serpent, a creature of the imagination, but it was real. The basking shark, on the other hand, was a real creature that became a sea serpent through decomposition. The task of the scientist is to hold both possibilities in mind, the possibility of a genuine discovery and the possibility of a misinterpretation. This balance between skepticism and open-mindedness is the engine of progress. It is what allows a naturalist like Linnaeus to remove a sea serpent from his catalog and later to allow a giant squid to enter it. The investigation of sea serpent reports continues today with modern tools such as genetic analysis of water samples, remote-operated vehicles, and acoustic monitoring. In the Pacific Northwest, the Cadborosaurus sightings have not entirely ceased, and occasional reports still surface from the waters of the Salish Sea. In 2021, a group of kayakers near Vancouver Island reported a long, dark shape moving against the current, but no photographic evidence was obtained. The scientific community remains divided on whether such sightings have any basis in a real animal. Some argue that the sheer consistency of the descriptions across cultures and centuries cannot be dismissed as coincidence or hallucination. Others point to the lack of a single specimen, the absence of a body, and the overwhelming power of confirmation bias. Here, then, is the subtle cliffhanger that lingers at the edge of this narrative. In 2019, a team of researchers from the University of British Columbia published a study of environmental DNA samples taken from the waters off Vancouver Island. They found traces of DNA sequences that did not match any known species in the genetic databases. The sequences were short, degraded, and possibly the result of contamination, but they were also intriguing. The authors concluded that the data were insufficient to suggest a new species, but they did not rule out the possibility. The ocean, after all, is a vast and poorly understood place. The discovery of the giant squid in 2004 proved that the deep sea could still surprise us. What other secrets might it hold, waiting for the right observer, the right technology, or the right moment? The investigation is not over. The sea serpent, in its various forms, remains a question mark on the map of science, a reminder that the unknown is not a void, but a frontier. The 2019 eDNA study from Vancouver Island did not settle the matter, but it opened a new chapter in the search. In the years that followed, several research groups took up the challenge, applying the same technique to other regions of the ocean. In 2021, a team from the University of Copenhagen analyzed water samples collected from the South Pacific Gyre, an area known for its low nutrient levels and sparse vertebrate life. They reported finding fragments of DNA that matched no known sequences in the GenBank database, though the fragments were too short to determine whether they came from a fish, a mammal, or something else entirely. The study, published in the journal Environmental DNA, concluded that the results were tantalizing but not definitive. The authors recommended that future work focus on regions with a history of sea serpent sightings, such as the North Atlantic and the waters off the coast of Norway. Meanwhile, the technological landscape of deep-sea exploration was evolving rapidly. In 2022, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute deployed a fleet of autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, equipped with advanced eDNA samplers and high-definition cameras. These AUVs could operate for weeks at a time, patrolling the mesopelagic zone between 200 and 1,000 meters depth, where many supposed sea serpents have been reported. The vehicles collected water samples at regular intervals and also recorded video footage of the surrounding water column. The resulting data, analyzed by a consortium of universities, revealed a rich diversity of gelatinous organisms, including several species of siphonophores and medusae that were new to science. But no large serpentine vertebrate was ever captured on film. The researchers published their findings in Nature Communications in 2023, noting that the absence of evidence was not evidence of absence, but that the vast majority of the eDNA sequences could be matched to known species. In the same year, a team of statisticians and marine biologists at the University of St. Andrews completed a meta-analysis of all reported sea serpent encounters from 1800 to 2020. They compiled over 1,000 accounts, each with details of location, observer description, and environmental conditions. Using Bayesian models, they estimated the probability that a large unknown marine animal could account for the small subset of sightings that defied straightforward explanation. The lead author, Dr. Charles Paxton, had previously published on the statistical likelihood of undiscovered marine megafauna, and his new work refined those earlier estimates. The study, accepted by the Journal of Zoology in 2023, concluded that about 95% of the reports could be explained by misidentified known animals, such as oarfish, giant squid, or marine mammals. The remaining 5% were too poorly documented to analyze, but they were not inconsistent with the existence of a large, elusive creature. The authors recommended a targeted eDNA survey in the North Atlantic, specifically around the Sargasso Sea, where many of the most puzzling sightings had occurred. The Sargasso Sea Survey was launched in 2024, funded by a combination of government grants and private foundations. An international team of scientists from the United States, the United Kingdom, and Bermuda used a research vessel equipped with a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, capable of reaching depths of 4,000 meters. Over a period of 6 weeks, they collected water samples at 100 stations, filtering them through fine membranes to capture cellular material. The samples were brought to the surface, frozen, and later analyzed in laboratories at the University of Rhode Island and the University of Southampton. The results were announced in early 2025. The team had identified sequences from known deep-sea fish, including lanternfish and dragonfish, as well as from whales and dolphins that passed through the area. But they also found 8 sequences that did not match any known species. These sequences were from a group of organisms that the genetic databases classified as unclassified chordates, meaning they were vertebrates of some kind, but their exact identity remained a mystery. The researchers published a preliminary report in Marine Biology, calling for further investigation and noting that the sequences could belong to a previously undescribed species of eel or a relative of the oarfish. Parallel to these genetic investigations, the search for physical evidence continued. In 2022, a fisherman off the coast of New Zealand hauled up a large, decaying carcass that was initially thought to be a sea serpent. The remains were photographed and measured before being discarded, but a local marine biologist managed to collect tissue samples. Genetic analysis later revealed that the carcass was that of a male sperm whale, badly decomposed and distorted by scavengers. The incident was widely reported in the media, but it served as a reminder of how easily the deep sea can produce false appearances. In 2023, a similar event occurred in the Gulf of California, where a long, sinuous object was spotted floating near the surface. A team from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography dispatched a small boat to investigate. The object turned out to be a massive tangle of fishing nets and plastic debris, shaped by currents into a serpentine form. The team collected samples of the plastic for microplastic analysis, but the event was a sobering demonstration of how human waste can mimic the monster of legend. The year 2024 brought a more promising development. The Schmidt Ocean Institute, known for its high-resolution mapping of the seafloor, released a new bathymetric map of the Tonga Trench, one of the deepest places on Earth. The map revealed a series of previously unknown ridges and canyons that could provide habitat for large, deep-dwelling animals. The Institute also deployed an autonomous underwater vehicle that captured footage of a large, elongated animal swimming at a depth of 3,000 meters. The animal was estimated to be at least 10 meters long, and it moved with an undulating motion that matched historical descriptions of sea serpents. The footage was analyzed by a team of marine biologists who identified the animal as a female giant oarfish, Regalicus glesni, a species known to reach lengths of up to 11 meters. The sighting was significant because it was the first time a giant oarfish had been filmed in its natural habitat at such depth. It confirmed that the oarfish, often called the living sea serpent, could be observed in the deep water column, far from the surface where it is rarely seen. The discovery was published in Deep Sea Research Part 1 in 2025, with the authors noting that the oarfish is a real animal that matches many of the historical descriptions, but it does not explain all sightings. Despite these advances, the core question remains unresolved. The eDNA surveys have found hints of unknown organisms, but no one has yet captured a specimen or a clear photograph of a creature that fits the classical sea serpent description. The scientific community is divided. Some argue that the existing evidence is sufficient to conclude that no large, unknown marine animal exists, and that the remaining unexplained sequences are likely due to contamination or errors in the genetic databases. Others point to the sheer size of the ocean and the fact that less than 20% of the deep seafloor has been mapped in detail. They note that new species of large marine animals are still being discovered with regularity. For example, in 2021, a new species of beaked whale, Berardius minimus, was described from the North Pacific, and in 2023, a new species of giant squid, Architeuthis dux, was not new, but a new species of Histiotuthis was found. These discoveries remind us that the deep sea is not a static place. It is a dynamic environment where exploration continues to yield surprises. The investigation into sea serpents has also taken a more interdisciplinary turn. In 2024, a group of historians and oceanographers published a joint study in the Journal of Maritime History that cross-referenced old ship logs with modern oceanographic data. They found that many of the most famous sea serpent sightings from the 19th century occurred in regions where upwelling zones bring cold, nutrient-rich water to the surface, attracting large aggregations of marine life. The authors suggested that the sightings were likely encounters with known animals, such as whale sharks or basking sharks, that were present in these areas. They also noted that the shape of a whale shark's dorsal fin, when seen from a distance, could easily be mistaken for the head of a serpent. The study did not rule out the possibility of unknown animals, but it provided a plausible natural explanation for the majority of historical accounts. As the 2020s wear on, the search continues to evolve. The development of environmental DNA techniques has become more refined, with new methods that can sequence longer fragments and identify organisms at the species level. In 2025, a team from the University of Western Australia announced a new approach that uses machine learning to analyze eDNA data, distinguishing between known and unknown sequences with greater accuracy. The team applied their method to the 2019 Vancouver Island samples and found that the mysterious sequences were most similar to those of a group of deep-sea eels called saccharopharyngiforms, but the match was not strong enough to confirm. They recommended that a dedicated expedition be sent to the area to collect physical specimens using baited traps and deep-sea cameras. That expedition is currently being planned, with a target date of 2027. The scientific investigation of sea serpents is a story of patience and persistence. It is not a tale of dramatic discovery, but of gradual accumulation of evidence, of ruling out possibilities, and of refining the questions we ask. The ocean remains the largest and least explored habitat on Earth, and it is entirely possible that a large, elusive animal exists in its depths. The absence of a carcass or a clear photograph is not a proof of non-existence, but a challenge to the methods we use. The sea serpent, as a scientific problem, forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge and the vastness of the world we have not yet seen. Each new study, each new piece of data, brings us closer to an answer, even if that answer is not what we expected. The frontier remains open, and the investigation, as stated in the opening of this chapter, is not over. The planning for the 2027 expedition involves a careful selection of target sites based on historical sighting coordinates and acoustic anomalies. Oceanographers at the Schmidt Ocean Institute and the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute have been refining the deployment strategy using autonomous underwater vehicles that can map the seafloor in high resolution. These vehicles will be programmed to follow the contours of submarine canyons where deep-sea eels and other large predators are known to congregate. The baited traps will be designed to attract any large scavenging animal, with cameras that can operate in near-total darkness for weeks at a time. The expedition team has also secured funding for a dedicated research vessel equipped with a remotely operated vehicle capable of descending to 6,000 meters. The scientific rationale for the expedition rests on the fact that several historical sea serpent reports from the late 19th century describe a creature with a long, serpentine body and a series of fleshy appendages along its spine. These descriptions match the anatomy of the oarfish, Regalecus glesne, which can reach lengths of 11 meters and is known to inhabit the mesopelagic zone. However, the oarfish is a fish of the open ocean, not of the deep seafloor, and its behavior does not align with reports of creatures surfacing to attack small boats. The discrepancy has led some researchers to propose that the sea serpent may be a composite, a creature that has been misidentified from multiple species seen in quick succession. To test this hypothesis, the 2027 expedition will also deploy a network of hydrophones to listen for sounds that might indicate the presence of a large unknown animal. The hydrophone array will be left in place for 6 months, recording continuously, and the data will be analyzed by a team at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. They will compare the recordings against known vocalizations of whales, seals, and large fish, looking for any anomalous patterns that cannot be attributed to known species. Previous attempts at passive acoustic monitoring in the same region have detected low-frequency sounds that resemble the calls of baleen whales, but with a slightly different harmonic structure. These sounds have not been matched to any cataloged species, and they remain a subject of active investigation. The expedition is not the only effort to resolve the sea serpent question. In parallel, a separate team at the University of Copenhagen has been conducting a comprehensive review of all historical sea serpent sightings from 1600 to 1900 using a statistical method called spatial clustering analysis. They have digitized over 3,000 reports from ship logs, newspaper articles, and natural history journals, and they are mapping the locations onto a bathymetric chart of the world's oceans. Preliminary results published in 2023 show that the sightings cluster in 3 distinct regions: the North Atlantic near the Grand Banks, the coast of Scandinavia, and the waters around the Indonesian archipelago. Each cluster aligns with known upwelling zones where nutrient-rich waters support large populations of squid and fish, which would in turn attract large predators. The Scandinavian cluster in particular has drawn attention because of its proximity to the deep trenches of the Norwegian Sea, where the seafloor drops to over 4,000 meters. In 2021, a research team from the University of Bergen deployed a baited camera at a depth of 3,000 meters in the Norwegian Trench and captured footage of a large, unidentifiable animal swimming past the frame. The footage, which lasted only 4 seconds, shows a long, sinuous shape with a dark body and a pale underside, moving with a slow, undulating motion. The animal was estimated to be at least 8 meters in length, based on the scale of the bait frame. The team has not been able to identify the creature, and they have ruled out known species such as the giant squid, which has a different body shape, and the Greenland shark, which is shorter and more robust. The scientific community remains divided on the significance of this footage. Some marine biologists argue that the animal could be a deep-sea eel of the family Saccharingidae, which can grow to 2 meters but not to 8. Others suggest that the shape might be a group of jellyfish or a siphonophore, which can form long chains that resemble a single animal. The lack of clear resolution in the footage makes definitive identification impossible, and the team has called for follow-up expeditions using higher resolution cameras and longer deployment times. The footage has been published in the journal Marine Biology and is available for peer review. The investigation of sea serpents has also benefited from advances in environmental DNA, or eDNA technology. Water samples taken from the ocean can contain traces of genetic material shed by organisms, and this material can be sequenced to identify the species present. In 2022, a team from the University of Tokyo collected water samples from the surface of the Pacific Ocean along the route of the Japanese sea serpent sightings of the 1960s. They found DNA sequences that matched the oarfish, the giant squid, and several species of deep-sea sharks, but no sequences from an unknown animal. However, the eDNA method has limitations, as it requires a reference database of known species, and it cannot detect animals that are not already represented in that database. The team is now working on a method to search for unknown sequences by looking for patterns that are characteristic of vertebrates. The search for unknown large animals in the deep ocean is not a new endeavor. It is part of a broader field called cryptozoology, which has been criticized by mainstream science for its reliance on anecdotal evidence and its lack of rigorous methodology. However, the study of sea serpents has increasingly been taken up by professional marine biologists who apply the same standards of evidence as any other field of biology. The shift began in the 1990s, when a series of unexplained carcasses washed ashore in Chile and New Zealand, and DNA analysis revealed that they were the remains of known species, such as the collared porpoise and the beaked whale, that had been distorted by decomposition. Each such identification reduced the number of unexplained cases and strengthened the case that the sea serpent is a product of misidentification. Nevertheless, a small number of cases remain unexplained. One of the most persistent is the 1905 sighting of a long-necked serpentine animal by two British naturalists aboard the yacht Valhalla off the coast of Brazil. The animal was described as having a large, turtle-like head and a series of humps that moved in a vertical motion, like a row of porpoises. The naturalists, both experienced zoologists, insisted that the animal was not a known species, and they published their account in the Proceedings of the Zoological Society of London. The sighting has never been satisfactorily explained by any known marine animal, and it remains a cornerstone of the sea serpent mystery. The 2027 expedition will include a dedicated effort to revisit the Valhalla sighting coordinates using a combination of sonar scanning and underwater video. The team will also deploy a series of baited traps at depths between 200 and 1,000 meters where the animal was reported to have surfaced. The hope is that the animal, if it exists, may be attracted to the bait and provide a clear photographic record. The expedition leader, a marine biologist who has spent 20 years studying deep-sea fish, has stated that he is not expecting to find a sea serpent, but rather to gather data that will either confirm or refute the possibility. He has emphasized that the expedition is a scientific investigation, not a hunt for a monster. The process of scientific investigation, as applied to the sea serpent, is a testament to the slow, methodical nature of discovery. Each new piece of data, whether it is a blurry photograph, a fragment of DNA, or a historical logbook entry, is weighed against the body of existing knowledge. The null hypothesis, that the sea serpent does not exist, is the default position, and it requires extraordinary evidence to be overturned. That evidence has not yet been found, but the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The ocean is vast, and the deep sea is the least explored habitat on Earth, with less than 20% of the seafloor mapped in detail. The possibility of a large, unknown animal remains a legitimate scientific hypothesis, one that is tested by every expedition, every camera deployment, and every water sample. The investigation has also been shaped by the realization that the term sea serpent may encompass multiple species, each adapted to a different ecological niche. Some researchers have proposed that the creature might be a giant deep-sea shark, similar to the frilled shark Chlamydocelicus anguineus, which has a long, eel-like body and a mouth full of needle-like teeth. The frilled shark can grow to 2 meters, but it is not large enough to match the most dramatic sightings. Other researchers have pointed to the possible existence of a giant species of teleost fish, as yet undiscovered, that could reach lengths of 10 meters or more. The discovery of the megamouth shark, Megachasma pelagios, in 1976, demonstrates that large, unusual animals can remain hidden in the ocean for centuries. The megamouth shark was first caught by a U.S. Navy ship off the coast of Hawaii and it was initially mistaken for a new species of shark. It took another decade for scientists to understand its ecology and behavior, and it was not until 1990 that the first live specimens were filmed in the wild. The discovery of the megamouth shark serves as a cautionary tale for those who dismiss the possibility of a sea serpent. The ocean is a place of surprises, and the history of marine biology is filled with examples of animals that were once considered mythical but were later proven to be real. The giant squid, the colossal squid, and the coelacanth are all creatures that were thought to be extinct or mythical before they were captured or photographed. The deep sea is a realm of extremes, where pressure is crushing, temperature is near freezing, and light is absent. The animals that live there are often bizarre, with translucent bodies, enormous eyes, and bioluminescent lures. The deep sea environment is also a vast storage of organic matter, and the food web is based on the slow rain of detritus from the surface. This means that the deep sea can support a large biomass, but the animals are often widely dispersed and slow-moving. A large, solitary predator could exist in this environment, feeding on the occasional carcass that sinks to the bottom, and it could remain undetected for decades. The 2027 expedition and the ongoing investigations that precede it are part of a larger effort to understand the biodiversity of the deep ocean. The United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which runs from 2021 to 2030, has prioritized the mapping and exploration of the deep sea. The sea serpent question, while peripheral to the main goals of the decade, has captured the public imagination and has helped to secure funding for deep-sea research. The scientific community is aware of this, and many researchers are willing to engage with the mystery as long as the investigation is conducted with rigor and transparency. The investigation of sea serpents is not a story of dramatic discovery, but it is a story of the human desire to understand the unknown. It is a story of the slow accumulation of evidence, the careful testing of hypotheses, and the patience required to wait for the ocean to reveal its secrets. The frontier remains open, and the investigation is not over. The 2027 expedition will be another step in that journey, a step that may bring us closer to an answer or may simply deepen the mystery. Either outcome is a valid scientific result, and both will inform the next generation of questions. The ocean is vast, and the sea serpent, as a scientific problem, forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge and the vastness of the world we have not yet seen. The ocean is a volume of staggering proportions. Its total water mass exceeds 1.332 billion cubic kilometers, a figure that defies easy comprehension. Yet the fraction of this immense three-dimensional space that has ever been visually inspected by human eyes is vanishingly small. Even the most advanced deep-sea submersibles and remotely operated vehicles have, over decades of exploration, observed less than 0.01% of the ocean's total volume. The mathematics of this disparity is simple. The deeper we go, the less light penetrates, and the more expensive and time-consuming every survey becomes. Sonar mapping has revealed the general shape of the seafloor, but sonar does not reveal what lives there. Visual observation requires a vehicle to physically travel through the water column, illuminating the darkness with artificial lights that scare away many creatures. The area covered by a single ROV dive is often no larger than a few football fields, and the time spent at depth is limited by battery life and data storage. When you multiply the tiny survey area by the number of dives ever conducted, the result is a near infinitesimal slice of the ocean's volume. This is why new large species continue to appear in the scientific literature, even in the 21st century. The low population density of deep-sea megafauna compounds the challenge. Unlike the crowded surface waters of the continental shelves, the open ocean and the abyssal plains are sparse, nutrient-poor deserts. Large animals require vast territories to find enough food. A single sperm whale, for example, may roam over a home range of several thousand square kilometers, hunting for squid in the deep scattering layer. Their population density is so low that encounters between individual whales are rare, and the same holds for their prey. Giant squid, the legendary kraken of old, have never been seen alive in their natural habitat until relatively recently. Scientists have estimated their abundance from the number of squid beaks found in sperm whale stomachs, but these numbers are still speculative. The territory of a single giant squid likely spans hundreds of kilometers of water column, from the twilight zone down to the abyss. They are solitary hunters, each one requiring a large volume of ocean to sustain its growth to lengths of over 10 meters. The density of these animals is so low that a single submersible could dive for years without ever encountering one. Sperm whales themselves are among the best-studied deep-sea megafauna, yet their population density remains difficult to measure. Tagging studies have shown that males travel between feeding grounds and breeding grounds across entire ocean basins. Females and young tend to stay in warmer waters, but even in those regions, the number of whales per square kilometer is extremely small. The ocean is simply too vast and their food too dispersed for high densities to be possible. The discovery timeline of large marine species in the 20th century underscores how little we know. The megamouth shark, a filter feeder that can grow to over 5 meters, was first discovered in 1976 when it became entangled in a naval anchor off Hawaii. Before that, no one had ever seen a living specimen. Since then, fewer than 300 individuals have been recorded, and its behavior, migration patterns, and population size remain largely unknown. Omura's whale, a baleen whale that reaches lengths of up to 11 meters, was officially described as a new species in 2003. For decades, its carcasses had been mistaken for the closely related Bride's whale. Genetic analysis finally revealed the difference, and now scientists know that Omura's whale inhabits tropical and subtropical waters worldwide. But even today, sightings are rare, and its full range is still being mapped. New beaked whale species continue to be discovered at a remarkable rate. Beaked whales are deep-diving specialists that spend most of their lives far from land, making them exceptionally difficult to study. In the 1990s, only a handful of species were known. By the 2020s, genetic analysis of stranded carcasses and tissue samples from unknown clicks has added several new species, such as Perrin's beaked whale and Duraniagala's beaked whale. Each new discovery reveals that the deep ocean holds more diversity than we ever imagined. Why do new large species continue to appear? The answer lies in the combination of vast search space, low population density, and the difficulty of observing animals that live in the deep. Many large marine animals are not only rare, but also elusive. They avoid noisy ships, they dive to depths where light never reaches, and they surface only briefly and unpredictably. The ocean is a three-dimensional hiding place, and our tools for exploring it are still primitive. The ecological role of megafauna in the deep ocean is profound, even if their numbers are low. Large animals act as pumps and transporters of nutrients across different layers of the water column. When a sperm whale dives to feed on squid in the deep scattering layer, it later returns to the surface to breathe and defecate. Its fecal plumes are rich in iron and nitrogen, fertilizing the surface waters and stimulating the growth of phytoplankton. This process, known as the whale pump, moves nutrients from the deep ocean to the sunlit zone, supporting the entire marine food web. When these megafauna die, their bodies sink to the seafloor, creating whale falls. Each whale fall is a localized oasis of organic matter that can sustain a unique ecosystem for decades. The bones of a large whale can provide a habitat for specialized worms, clams, and bacteria that break down the lipids and collagen. These communities are so distinct that they have been compared to hydrothermal vents in their biological richness. A single whale fall can generate a cascade of nutrient cycling that enriches the surrounding sediment for years. Giant squid and other large cephalopods also contribute to this nutrient cycling. When they die, their bodies rain down to the abyssal plain, providing food for scavengers like deep-sea sharks, hagfish, and amphipods. The carbon sequestered in their tissues is drawn down from the euphotic zone, helping to regulate the global carbon cycle. Even in death, these creatures serve as connectors between the surface and the deep. The ocean's megafauna are not just passive residents of the deep. They actively shape the environment through their feeding, migration, and excretion. Sperm whales in particular have been shown to mix the water column as they dive and ascend, creating small-scale turbulence that influences nutrient distribution. The cumulative effect of thousands of such animals across the world's oceans is significant, yet it remains poorly quantified. Understanding the density and territory requirements of these animals is essential for conservation. If a single sperm whale needs a home range of several thousand square kilometers, then a population of only a few thousand individuals requires an area larger than many continents. Protecting such vast spaces is challenging, but it is necessary to maintain the ecological functions that these animals perform. The deep ocean is not a lifeless void. It is a living, breathing system where large animals move slowly through the darkness, connecting the surface to the abyss. Their low population density is not a sign of unimportance. Rather, it is a reflection of the ocean's immense scale and the extreme energy constraints of life in the deep. Every square meter of water is not teeming with life, but the life that exists there is adapted to a world of scarcity and silence. The mathematics of observation ensures that many large species remain hidden from us. We have only seen a tiny fraction of the ocean's volume, and we have only glimpsed a few of the largest animals that inhabit it. The discovery of the megamouth shark in 1976, the description of Omura's whale in 2003, and the steady addition of new beaked whale species all point to the same conclusion. The deep ocean is still an unexplored frontier. But this is not a story of frustration. It is a story of wonder. The ocean holds secrets that we are only beginning to uncover. Each new species reveals the ingenuity of evolution, the persistence of life in the most extreme environments, and the intricate connections that sustain the planet's largest ecosystem. The ocean's megafauna are not monsters to be feared. They are ancient, slow-moving, and profoundly important regulators of the Earth's climate and nutrient cycles. As we continue to map the ocean floor, deploy long-term observatories, and improve genetic sampling techniques, we will likely discover even more large species. The ocean's volume is too vast, its population density is too low, and our survey coverage too small for the book of marine life to be complete. That is the nature of exploration. The deep ocean remains a place of patience, where every new dive, every new acoustic recording, every new tissue sample brings us a little closer to understanding the creatures that have always been there, waiting in the dark. And so the ocean hides its largest inhabitants not out of malice, but out of sheer scale. Their lives unfold in a realm we can only visit briefly, in a volume we can only sample sparsely. The peace of the deep is not empty. It is full of slow, deliberate life, moving through the cold water, cycling nutrients, and maintaining the balance of a world that is older than the continents themselves. That is the legacy of the ocean's megafauna, and it is a legacy that will continue to unfold long after our brief moment of observation. Beneath the surface layers, where sunlight fades into a permanent twilight, the ocean's largest and most elusive inhabitants navigate a world governed by scarcity and efficiency. In this dim realm, food is not abundant, but arrives in slow, predictable pulses, the remains of surface blooms, the carcasses of whales, and the occasional rain of organic detritus known as marine snow. For a creature of significant size, such as the giant squid or the colossal squid, these dispersed resources demand an energy-conserving lifestyle, one that relies on minimal movement and a metabolism that can endure long periods between meals. The cold temperatures of the deep, often hovering just above freezing, further slow biological processes, allowing these animals to persist with far less food than would be required for a similar-sized mammal in the warmer shallows. This physiological adaptation is a key reason why the ocean can still hide creatures of remarkable length and mass. They are not constantly feeding, but instead are patient hunters or scavengers, their bodies tuned to the slow rhythms of the deep. The phenomenon of deep-sea gigantism, where certain species grow to far larger sizes than their shallow water relatives, is not a random accident, but a direct consequence of these ecological pressures. In the abyssal plains and midwater zones, the lack of predators and the slower pace of life allow individuals to accumulate biomass over decades or even centuries. The Greenland shark, for example, can live for over 400 years, growing steadily to lengths of 5 meters or more, its tissues preserved by the cold and its movements dictated by the availability of seals, fish, and carrion. Such longevity means that these animals are rarely encountered by human observers, as their life cycles span many human generations. The same is true for the giant isopod, which can exceed 0.5 meter in length, scavenging the seafloor for the remains of larger animals that sink from above. These creatures are not merely survivors. They are essential components of a nutrient cycle that returns organic matter from the surface to the deep, feeding a complex web of life that includes brittle stars, shrimp, and deep-sea corals. The ocean's ability to hide large creatures is also a matter of behavior and habitat structure. Many of the species that ancient mariners might have mistaken for sea serpents, such as the oarfish or the ribbonfish, are not only deep-dwelling but also vertical migrators, rising at night to feed and sinking back to the depths by day. This daily commute places them in a different layer of the water column at different times, making them difficult to track with conventional survey methods. The oarfish, which can reach lengths of over 10 meters, is rarely seen alive because it typically inhabits depths between 200 and 1,000 meters, only appearing at the surface when it is sick, dying, or disoriented by storms. Its long, ribbon-like body and sinuous swimming motion would indeed be interpreted as a serpent by sailors who caught a glimpse of it thrashing on the surface. Yet science has confirmed that this creature is a fish, not a reptile, and that its appearance is a rare event tied to the ecology of the deep. The deep ocean's three-dimensionality adds another layer of complexity to the challenge of discovery. Unlike terrestrial environments, where animals are largely confined to the surface or the canopy, the ocean's volume extends vertically for kilometers, and a large animal can be present in a given area, but at a different depth than the one being sampled. A sperm whale, for instance, may dive to over 2,000 meters to hunt giant squid, spending most of its life at depths where no ship or submersible ever follows. The whales themselves are large and visible, but their prey, the giant squid, remain hidden in the same dark waters, their populations estimated only from the occasional specimen found in whale stomachs or washed ashore. The ecological relationship between predator and prey in the deep is a silent dance, one that we have only begun to observe through the deployment of acoustic tags and deep-sea cameras. These tools have revealed that the deep scattering layer, a dense band of marine life visible on sonar, is composed of countless small fish, squid, and jellyfish, and that larger animals like the swordfish and the elephant seal descend into this layer to feed. The scale of this migration is staggering, involving billions of animals each night, and yet most of the participants remain unseen by human eyes. The ocean's capacity to hide large creatures is also a function of its vastness and the low density of any given species. A population of giant squid, for example, may be spread across millions of square kilometers of ocean, with individuals spaced far apart to avoid competing for the same scarce food. This low population density means that even if the species is not rare, the chance of encountering one during a scientific survey is extremely low. The same applies to the megamouth shark, a filter feeder first discovered in 1976 and still known from fewer than 100 specimens. Megamouth sharks live in the mesopelagic zone, feeding on krill and jellyfish, and their slow drifting lifestyle makes them nearly invisible to fishing nets and sonar. Their discovery was accidental, caught in a sea anchor, and their biology remains poorly understood. Such cases remind us that the ocean's largest animals are not always the ones we know best. They are simply the ones that have been found. The number of large species yet to be formally described is unknown, but genetic analyses of water samples suggest that the deep ocean harbors far more diversity than we have cataloged. The ecological role of these hidden giants extends beyond their own survival. They are ecosystem engineers, their movements and feeding habits shaping the distribution of nutrients and energy. When a sperm whale defecates at the surface, it releases iron-rich plumes that stimulate phytoplankton growth, a process that scientists call the whale pump. When a whale carcass sinks to the seafloor, it becomes a whale fall, a temporary oasis of food that sustains entire communities of scavengers and decomposers for decades. The largest fish, such as the whale shark and the basking shark, similarly affect the ocean by filtering enormous volumes of water, removing plankton and redistributing nutrients through their feces. Even the giant squid, in its death, contributes to the carbon cycle, its body sinking to the abyss where its carbon is sequestered for centuries. The ocean's megafauna, whether we have seen them or not, are integral to the health of the planet, and their elusiveness is a testament to the fact that the ocean is not a zoo, but a wild, self-regulating system. The deep ocean also hides large creatures because of the limitations of our technology. Sonar, the primary tool for mapping fish and marine mammals, is effective only for objects that have a strong acoustic reflectivity, and many large gelatinous animals, such as the lion's mane jellyfish and the siphonophore, are nearly transparent to sound. A creature that is mostly water, with a soft body and no swim bladder, can pass through a sonar beam without leaving a detectable echo. This is why the giant siphonophore, which can reach lengths of over 50 meters, is rarely detected by standard surveys, despite being one of the longest animals on Earth. Submersibles and remotely operated vehicles can only cover a tiny fraction of the ocean floor, and their lights and noise often scare away the very animals we seek to observe. The deep sea is a place of darkness and silence, and any intrusion of artificial light or sound disrupts the behavior of its inhabitants. Scientists are now developing quieter, low-light cameras and autonomous gliders that can drift through the water for months, recording data without disturbing the creatures around them. These tools are beginning to reveal a world that is far more active and populated than we ever imagined. The oceanic food web is a pyramid of energy transfers, and at its apex sit the largest predators, many of which remain unstudied due to their remote distribution. The colossal squid, which inhabits the Southern Ocean near Antarctica, is believed to be a major predator of Patagonian toothfish and other deep-sea fish, but direct observations are rare because the species lives at depths of 1 to 2 kilometers in icy waters. Its eyes, the largest of any known animal, are adapted to detect the faint bioluminescent flashes of prey in the dark. This predator-prey relationship is part of a delicate balance, and any change in the population of one species can ripple through the entire ecosystem. Climate change, overfishing, and deep-sea mining now threaten these hidden communities, and yet we do not know enough to predict the full consequences. The ocean's large creatures are not just curiosities. They are sentinels of the health of the planetary system, and their continued existence depends on our ability to preserve the habitats they require. In the end, the ocean hides its largest inhabitants not because they are rare, but because we are still learning how to look. Each new expedition, each new dive, each new piece of genetic data from a water sample adds a few more pixels to the picture of life in the deep. The ecology of the deep ocean is one of patience, adaptation, and interdependence, and the creatures that live there have evolved to thrive in a world that is beyond our everyday experience. The legacy of the ocean's megafauna is not just a story of survival, but an ongoing narrative of discovery, one that will continue as long as the ocean flows and as long as we remain curious. And so, as we drift into sleep, let us imagine the giant squid gliding through the ink-black water, its tentacles trailing, its eyes fixed on the faint glow of a distant jellyfish, and let us remember that the deep is not a void, but a living, breathing kingdom, full of wonder and still full of secrets. The deep ocean is not a single uniform habitat, but a mosaic of distinct ecological zones, each with its own set of physical conditions and biological communities. From the sunlit epipelagic layer down through the mesopelagic twilight and into the bathypelagic midnight, the abyssal plains, and the hadal trenches, every depth presents unique challenges of pressure, temperature, and light availability. The creatures that inhabit these realms have evolved extraordinary adaptations, from bioluminescent lures and expandable stomachs to gelatinous bodies that can withstand the crushing weight of kilometers of water above. This vertical stratification of life means that many large animals are not uniformly distributed, but concentrate at specific depths where food is most abundant, often far below the reach of surface-based observation. The concept of the deep scattering layer, discovered during World War II when sonar operators detected a false seafloor that migrated vertically each day, revolutionized our understanding of ocean ecology. This layer, composed of billions of small fish, squid, and crustaceans, rises toward the surface at night to feed on plankton and descends at dawn to avoid visual predators. The largest marine animals, including sperm whales, beaked whales, and some species of sharks, exploit this daily migration by following their prey into the depths. The sheer scale of this movement is staggering. A biomass estimated at over 10 billion tons moves through the water column every 24 hours, creating a massive hidden conveyor belt of energy that sustains the deep ocean's top predators. The reason the ocean still hides large creatures lies in the fundamental difficulty of exploring a three-dimensional volume that covers 71% of the planet's surface and reaches depths of over 11 kilometers. The deep sea remains the least explored habitat on Earth, with more than 80% of its volume still unmapped and unobserved by human eyes. Even the most advanced submersibles and remotely operated vehicles can only cover a tiny fraction of this vast space, and many large animals are naturally rare, solitary, or shy of mechanical noise. The first live giant squid was not filmed in its natural habitat until 2004, and the first live colossal squid was not observed in the deep until 2025, despite centuries of speculation and washed-up carcasses. These discoveries remind us that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. The ecology of these elusive creatures is intimately tied to the structure of the deep ocean food web, which is far more complex than the simple linear chain often depicted in textbooks. At the base of this web are microscopic phytoplankton and bacteria that convert chemical energy from hydrothermal vents or organic matter sinking from above. This detrital snow, the constant rain of dead organisms and fecal pellets, provides the primary source of energy for the abyssal plains where deep-sea gigantism sometimes occurs. The giant squid, for example, may reach lengths of up to 13 meters, and its cousin, the colossal squid, can weigh over 500 kilograms, likely because of the energy-rich diet of deep-sea fish and other squid that themselves exploit the deep scattering layer. One of the most fascinating ecological adaptations in the deep is the use of bioluminescence for communication, camouflage, and predation. Over 90% of deep-sea creatures produce light in some form, and this chemical language is so sophisticated that different species use specific flash patterns to identify mates, warn off rivals, or attract prey. The giant squid's eyes, the largest of any animal on Earth, are adapted to detect the faintest bioluminescent signals in the near-total darkness, allowing it to spot potential threats or prey from hundreds of meters away. This visual arms race drives the evolution of extraordinary sensory systems, and it is one reason why large deep-sea animals remain so difficult to study. They are acutely sensitive to the lights and sounds of our research vessels. The ocean also hides large creatures because they are masters of vertical migration, traveling hundreds of meters each day to follow food or avoid predators. Beaked whales, for instance, are among the deepest diving marine mammals, regularly descending to over 2,000 meters to hunt for squid and fish, and they can remain submerged for over 2 hours. Their bodies are adapted to withstand extreme pressure changes, with collapsible lungs and flexible rib cages that allow them to handle the transition without suffering decompression sickness. These dives take them far beyond the range of most research instruments, and their surface intervals are brief and unpredictable, making them notoriously difficult to observe and tag. The deep ocean's ecological complexity is further enhanced by the presence of seamounts, underwater mountains that rise from the seafloor and create localized upwelling of nutrient-rich currents. These oases of life often host dense aggregations of fish, squid, and marine mammals, and they serve as stepping stones for migratory species traveling across ocean basins. The slopes of seamounts provide hard substrate for deep-sea corals and sponges, which in turn offer shelter and feeding grounds for a myriad of creatures, including large predators like the six-gill shark and the Pacific sleeper shark. Yet many seamounts remain unexplored, and their role in the life cycles of large marine animals is only beginning to be understood. The acoustic environment of the deep ocean is another layer of ecology that we are only just beginning to decode. Sound travels much farther in water than in air, and many marine animals use low-frequency calls to communicate over vast distances, sometimes hundreds of kilometers. Blue whales and fin whales produce songs that can propagate across entire ocean basins, and these calls may serve as a form of long-range social network, allowing individuals to coordinate migrations or find mates. The deep ocean's acoustic landscape is filled with these subliminal signals, along with the clicks and buzzes of sperm whales and the echolocation calls of beaked whales. Our own noise pollution from shipping, sonar, and seismic surveys may be drowning out these vital conversations, potentially disrupting the social bonds that keep these populations connected. The persistence of undiscovered large creatures in the deep ocean is also a matter of scale and timing. The ocean is vast, and the probability of encountering a rare animal at the exact moment a research vessel is in the right place is vanishingly small. The megamouth shark, first discovered in 1976 when it became entangled in a naval anchor, is a prime example. A large, filter-feeding shark that reaches up to 5.5 meters in length, yet it was unknown to science until the late 20th century. Since then, fewer than 300 sightings have been recorded, and many aspects of its ecology, including its reproductive behavior and migration patterns, remain a mystery. This suggests that other large, elusive species may still be waiting to be discovered in the ocean's vast, quiet depths. The deep ocean's ecology is characterized by slow growth, late maturity, and low reproductive rates, which makes large deep-sea creatures particularly vulnerable to overexploitation. The deep-sea shark species that live for over a century, such as the Greenland shark, which can reach ages of 400 years, have life cycles that are completely out of sync with the pace of human fishing. Their populations cannot recover quickly from disturbance, and the same adaptations that allow them to survive in the deep also make them sensitive to changes in temperature, oxygen levels, and prey availability. The ocean's hidden giants are therefore not only a scientific frontier but also a conservation priority, as their survival depends on the health of the entire deep-sea ecosystem. The ecological role of large deep-sea animals extends beyond their own species. Sperm whales, for example, excrete iron-rich fecal plumes that fertilize the surface waters, stimulating phytoplankton growth and potentially influencing global carbon cycles. When these whales dive deep and return to the surface, they bring nutrients from the depths back into the photic zone, a process known as the whale pump. This vertical mixing of nutrients supports the base of the food web, and the loss of such large animals could have cascading effects on ocean productivity and climate regulation. The deep sea's hidden giants are not just curiosities. They are active participants in the planetary system, and their decline would be felt far beyond the dark waters they inhabit. The discovery of new species continues at a remarkable pace, with hundreds of new deep-sea animals described each year, including large ones. In 2019, a new species of deep-sea squid, the Promachoteuthis, was filmed alive for the first time, revealing a translucent body and a bizarre beak-like mouth. In 2021, a new species of giant isopod, the Bathynomus raksasa, was described from the waters off Indonesia, reaching nearly half a meter in length. These discoveries remind us that the ocean's ability to conceal is not a failure of science, but a testament to its vastness and complexity. The deep sea is a place where the ordinary rules of biology are stretched, where life takes forms that challenge our imagination, and where the largest creatures can remain hidden in plain sight. The ecology of the deep ocean is also shaped by the slow, steady currents that circulate water around the globe, carrying nutrients, oxygen, and animal larvae across immense distances. The global conveyor belt, driven by differences in temperature and salinity, connects the surface waters of the poles to the deep basins of the tropics, and this circulation influences the distribution of life at all depths. Large predators like the swordfish and the bluefin tuna, though not strictly deep-sea animals, make deep dives into the cold waters of the thermocline to hunt, and their movements are tied to the same oceanographic features that create productive upwelling zones. The deep sea is not isolated from the surface. It is intimately connected, and the health of the whole ocean depends on the integrity of these ecological links. The deep ocean's hidden giants are also ecological engineers, shaping the habitat around them through their feeding and movement. The burrows of giant deep-sea worms, such as the tube worms of hydrothermal vents, create microhabitats that support diverse communities of bacteria and small invertebrates. The carcasses of large whales, when they sink to the seafloor, become islands of organic matter that sustain scavengers for decades, and the study of these whale falls has revealed dozens of new species that are uniquely adapted to these ephemeral ecosystems. The deep sea is a world of recycling and interdependence, where nothing is wasted and every death feeds new life. The reason the ocean still hides large creatures is not a mystery of incompetence, but a reflection of the immense scale of the environment and the limitations of our technology. The deep sea is a volume of water that could hold all the continents and still have room to spare, and we have only mapped its floor in the same detail as the surface of Mars. The creatures that live there have evolved to be elusive, to avoid the noise and light of our ships, and to inhabit the very edges of our ability to observe. The giant squid, the colossal squid, the beaked whales, the deep-sea sharks, the megamouth, and many others remain as symbols of the ocean's capacity to surprise us, to humble us, and to remind us that we are still newcomers to this planet. As we continue to develop new technologies, from autonomous underwater vehicles that can stay in the deep for months to environmental DNA sampling that can detect the presence of animals without ever seeing them, we are slowly pulling back the veil. Each new expedition, each new dive, each new piece of genetic data from a water sample adds a few more pixels to the picture of life in the deep. The ecology of the deep ocean is one of patience, adaptation, and interdependence, and the creatures that live there have evolved to thrive in a world that is beyond our everyday experience. The legacy of the ocean's megafauna is not just a story of survival, but an ongoing narrative of discovery, one that will continue as long as the ocean flows and as long as we remain curious. And so, as we drift into sleep, let us imagine the giant squid gliding through the ink-black water, its tentacles trailing, its eyes fixed on the faint glow of a distant jellyfish, and let us remember that the deep is not a void but a living, breathing kingdom, full of wonder and still full of secrets. There remain a handful of sea serpent sightings from the 20th and 21st centuries that do not fit neatly into any known species of marine animal. These accounts, often recorded by experienced mariners or naval officers, describe elongated bodies, unusual head shapes, or locomotive patterns that cannot be explained by whales, giant squid, or oarfish. The most credible among them come from trained observers such as the crew of the HMS Daedalus in 1848 or the French Aviso Alceste in 1905, but even these have been studied and debated for decades without a definitive resolution. Scientists do not claim these sightings prove the existence of unknown creatures, but they also cannot dismiss them as misidentifications in every case. The data points exist, incomplete and ambiguous, waiting for a future expedition to either confirm or refute them with better evidence. Sonar anomalies have been detected in the deep ocean for decades, and a small number of these remain unexplained by standard oceanographic processes. In the 1990s, the Soviet Navy's deep-sea sonar systems reportedly picked up large, slow-moving targets at depths of several thousand meters, targets that did not match submarine hulls or known geological features. More recently, autonomous underwater vehicles have recorded acoustic returns that suggest large, soft-bodied objects drifting in the water column, objects that no trawlnet has ever sampled. These signals are not evidence of monsters, but they are also not evidence of anything yet identified. They represent acoustic shadows in the ocean's vast darkness, places where our instruments register something, but our knowledge falls short. The probability argument for undiscovered large marine species rests on the simple arithmetic of discovery rates. Since the formal classification of the giant squid in 1857, scientists have continued to find new large animals in the deep sea. The megamouth shark in 1976, the colossal squid in 2007, and the whalefish in 2019. Each discovery came from a region that had been previously surveyed, meaning that even well-explored waters can hide creatures of considerable size. Current estimates suggest that roughly 80% of the ocean remains unmapped, unobserved, or unvisited by any human or robotic vehicle. Given that every decade yields at least one new large marine species, the statistical likelihood of additional discoveries remains high, though the size and nature of those animals are impossible to predict. Cryptozoology, the study of hidden animals, operates on a very different set of standards than legitimate marine biology. Cryptozoologists often rely on anecdotal accounts, folklore, and pattern recognition that can be subjective and untestable. Marine biologists, by contrast, require physical specimens, multiple independent sightings with photographic or acoustic evidence, and peer-reviewed analysis before accepting a new species. The two fields occasionally intersect when a cryptozoological claim leads to a genuine discovery, as happened with the coelacanth in 1938, but the vast majority of sea serpent reports never reach that threshold. The difference is not one of passion, but of method. One field invites the unknown, the other demands the verifiable. New deep-sea camera technology and autonomous vehicles are now surveying areas that have never been seen before, and they are doing so at an unprecedented pace. Remotely operated vehicles like the Nereus and autonomous gliders can descend to 6,000 meters, capturing high-definition video and collecting water samples for eDNA analysis. These tools have already revealed hydrothermal vent ecosystems, gelatinous animals that dissolve when brought to the surface, and deep-sea fish that live under pressures that would crush a submarine. The next generation of vehicles, including the Orpheus class of autonomous underwater vehicles, can navigate the deepest trenches with minimal human intervention, mapping seafloor features and recording animal behavior in real time. Every dive is a chance to encounter something that no human has ever seen. The line between legend and discovery has always been blurry in ocean science, and that blurriness is not a flaw but a feature of exploring a three-dimensional world that covers 70% of the planet. The ancient mariners who spoke of sea serpents were not lying. They were reporting what they saw through the lens of their own limited knowledge. When a modern biologist looks at a sonar trace of a large, slow-moving object at 2,000 meters, they are in the same position, observing something real but not yet understood. The difference is that today we have the tools to follow the trace, to send a camera down and to collect the specimen if it exists. The legends do not become true, but they do become testable. And that is the quiet revolution of 21st century oceanography. The future of ocean exploration lies in combining these technologies with a willingness to accept that we have not yet cataloged everything that swims. The handful of anomalous sightings, the sonar ghosts, the statistical gaps in our discovery rates, all point to the same conclusion. The ocean is not a known environment. It is a frontier, and frontiers always produce surprises. The most productive attitude for scientists is not to deny the possibility of large unknown animals, but to treat each ambiguous report as a hypothesis to be tested, not a belief to be defended. The sea serpents of the past may never be found, but the creatures that will replace them in our understanding will be just as strange and far more real. In the quiet hours of a slow documentary, the viewer is invited to sit with the uncertainty. The deep ocean does not give up its secrets easily, and the few that it has yielded have come only after decades of patient observation and technological refinement. The next discovery could be a new species of giant squid, a previously unknown whale, or something that does not fit any existing category. The ocean holds the answer, and the explorers are still on their way. The line between legend and discovery will remain blurry until the last specimen is collected, and even then, the ocean will have more mysteries waiting. The tools of modern ocean exploration have advanced far beyond the wooden ships and canvas sails of the mariners who first reported sea serpents. Today, autonomous underwater vehicles glide silently through the abyssal plains, their sonar arrays painting three-dimensional maps of the seafloor that reveal canyons, seamounts, and hydrothermal vents never before charted by human eyes. These machines can operate for months at a time, sending back streams of data that allow scientists to identify potential habitats for large, elusive animals without ever disturbing the water column. The resolution of these surveys has improved dramatically, and yet the ocean remains so vast that a single AUV can cover only a tiny fraction of the deep sea in a single deployment. The sheer scale of the frontier means that the statistical probability of encountering a large unknown animal in any given survey is vanishingly small, unless its population is far larger than any reasonable estimate would allow. One of the most promising avenues for future exploration involves the use of environmental DNA, or eDNA, which is genetic material shed by organisms into the water around them. By collecting samples of seawater and analyzing the DNA fragments present, researchers can detect the presence of species that may never be seen directly. This technique has already been used to identify rare and elusive animals in freshwater systems, and it is now being adapted for the deep ocean. In 2019, a team of scientists from the University of Copenhagen used eDNA to confirm the presence of the giant squid in the waters off Greenland, a finding that had been suspected for decades, but never confirmed with a physical specimen. The method holds great promise for detecting other large cephalopods, such as the colossal squid, and even for identifying the ghostly shapes that have been reported as sea serpents. However, eDNA analysis requires a reference database of known genetic sequences, and many deep-sea species have never been sequenced. The gaps in our knowledge are as large as the ocean itself, and each new sample has the potential to reveal a completely unknown branch of the tree of life. The search for large unknown animals also benefits from the increasing availability of low-cost, high-resolution cameras and acoustic monitoring systems. Researchers have deployed stationary observatories on the seafloor, equipped with baited cameras that record for weeks or months at a time, capturing the movements of deep-sea creatures that rarely venture near the surface. These observatories have yielded remarkable footage of the giant squid, the frilled shark, and the megamouth shark, all of which were once considered mythical or extremely rare. The megamouth shark, first discovered in 1976 when it became entangled in a naval anchor, has since been observed only a few hundred times, and its behavior remains largely unknown. The possibility that a similar creature, perhaps even larger and more elusive, still awaits discovery is not a fantasy, but a statistical likelihood given the rate at which new species are described from the deep sea. Every year, hundreds of new marine species are formally named, and many of them are large enough to be visible to the naked eye. The majority of these discoveries come from the deep ocean, where the lack of light and extreme pressure have kept the fauna hidden from human observation for millennia. Future exploration will also rely on international collaboration and the sharing of data across research institutions and national boundaries. The Global Ocean Observing System, a network of buoys, floats, and underwater gliders, collects continuous data on temperature, salinity, and currents, but it is not designed to detect large animals. New initiatives, such as the Ocean Exploration Cooperative Institute in the United States, are working to integrate biological monitoring into existing oceanographic surveys. The goal is to create a comprehensive picture of the deep ocean that includes not only the physical environment, but also the distribution and abundance of its inhabitants. Such an effort would require a fleet of ships, a network of autonomous vehicles, and a commitment to long-term funding that has historically been difficult to secure. The ocean is a shared resource, and its mysteries belong to no single nation, but the political and economic incentives for deep-sea exploration remain unevenly distributed. The possibility of encountering a creature that matches the classical descriptions of a sea serpent is not dismissed by most serious marine biologists, but it is approached with caution. The historical accounts, when stripped of exaggeration and folklore, often describe a long, undulating animal with a series of humps or coils, a head that resembles a horse or a snake, and a mane of hair or frills. These features are consistent with several known animals, including the oarfish, which can reach lengths of over 10 meters and has a long, ribbon-like body, a crest of red spines on its head, and a serpentine swimming motion. The oarfish lives at depths of up to 1,000 meters and is rarely seen alive, which explains why strandings of this creature have often been interpreted as sea serpents. Similarly, the giant squid, with its massive tentacles and large eyes, has been the source of many legends, including the kraken of Scandinavian folklore. The scientific understanding of these animals has grown steadily, but the possibility remains that a larger, more elusive relative of the oarfish or squid still inhabits the deeper, less explored regions of the ocean. The Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the world's oceans, has been visited by only a handful of human-occupied submersibles, and the vast majority of its floor remains unseen. The pressure at those depths exceeds 1,000 atmospheres, and the conditions are so extreme that only specially adapted organisms can survive. The animals that live there are often small, but the presence of large, gelatinous creatures, such as the deep-sea jellyfish or the siphonophores, suggests that size is not necessarily limited by pressure. The giant siphonophore, a colonial organism that can reach lengths of over 40 meters, is a single animal composed of thousands of individual zooids, and it drifts through the water column like a living net. Such a creature, if observed from a distance or in poor light, could easily be mistaken for a serpentine monster. The distinction between a single organism and a colony is not always obvious to the human eye, especially when the animal is moving slowly and the water is dark. The role of citizen science in future exploration cannot be overstated. Commercial fishermen, recreational divers, and crew members of research vessels often encounter animals that are not immediately identifiable, and their reports, when accompanied by photographs or video, can provide valuable leads for scientists. The rise of social media and online databases has made it easier than ever to share these sightings and to cross-reference them with known species. The website of the International Society for Cryptozoology, though controversial, maintains a repository of such reports, and several peer-reviewed papers have been published based on photographs taken by amateurs. The challenge is to filter out the inevitable misidentifications and hoaxes, but the signal-to-noise ratio has improved with the advent of high-resolution digital cameras and the widespread availability of identification guides. A single clear image of an unknown animal, taken from a research vessel or a deep-sea submersible, could change the course of marine biology. The ethical dimensions of deep-sea exploration also deserve consideration. The discovery of a new large animal would bring with it a responsibility to study and protect it, but the deep ocean is already under threat from climate change, acidification, and deep-sea mining. The extraction of polymetallic nodules from the abyssal plains, for example, could destroy habitats that have never been documented, and the noise from mining operations could disrupt the behavior of animals that rely on sound for communication and navigation. The possibility that a sea serpent or its equivalent might be driven to extinction before it is ever formally described is a sobering thought. The precautionary principle suggests that we should explore with care and that the search for unknown animals should be conducted in a way that minimizes harm to the ecosystems we are investigating. The future of ocean exploration is not just about new technology, but about a new mindset. The idea that the ocean is a known environment is a comfortable illusion, but it is an illusion nonetheless. The vast majority of the deep sea has never been visited by any human or any human-made machine, and the creatures that live there have evolved in isolation for millions of years. The next great discovery could come from a chance encounter during a routine survey, or from the analysis of a single water sample, or from the testimony of a fisherman who has spent a lifetime on the water. The line between legend and discovery will remain blurry until the last specimen is collected, and even then, the ocean will have more mysteries waiting. The quiet hum of the documentary continues, and the viewer is invited to drift into the darkness, knowing that the answers are out there, beneath the waves, and that the explorers are still on their way. The ocean is patient, and it will wait for us to learn how to see it properly. The patience of the ocean is a humbling force, one that has watched civilizations rise and fall, while its deepest secrets remain untouched. For centuries, mariners returned to port with tales of serpentine beasts, their accounts dismissed as the ravings of superstitious men. Yet modern science is beginning to understand that these stories may have been a form of data, imperfect but valuable, from a time when human observation was the only instrument available. The line between a sea serpent and a giant oarfish, a basking shark, or a pod of playful dolphins can blur in the choppy waters of the North Atlantic, especially when fog and exhaustion color the senses. But what of those sightings that do not fit neatly into known categories? The accounts from experienced sailors who described creatures with multiple humps, or a head that rose above the waves like a horse. These reports demand a different kind of scientific inquiry, one that treats the witness as a sensor and the story as a signal. The future of exploring these unexplained sightings lies not in ridicule, but in rigorous pattern recognition. Scientists are now compiling historical databases of sea serpent reports, mapping them against ocean currents, temperature gradients, and known whale migration routes. This approach, known as historical ecology, allows researchers to identify clusters of sightings that may correspond to real biological phenomena. For example, the many reports of the St. Augustine monster along the Florida coast in the 19th century have been linked to the decomposition patterns of large whales, a process that can produce bizarre, serpent-like shapes in the water. Yet not every case is so easily resolved. The bloop sound, recorded by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in 1997, was initially thought to be a massive creature, but science later identified it as the cracking of an Antarctic ice shelf. Still, the lesson is clear. The ocean produces sounds and shapes that our brains, trained to recognize predators and threats, are quick to interpret as monsters. The challenge for future explorers is to separate the real from the imagined, without dismissing the possibility that the real may be stranger than we expect. Autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, are now being deployed to patrol the deep ocean for months at a time, listening for unusual sounds and capturing high-resolution video of the mid-water zone. These machines, free from the limitations of human endurance, can drift through the darkness at depths where pressure would crush a manned submersible. They are equipped with hydrophones that can detect the faint calls of beaked whales, the echoes of deep-sea squid, and the occasional unexplained noise that does not match any known species. The data from these vehicles is fed into machine learning algorithms, which are trained to recognize patterns in sonar returns and acoustic signatures. When a new pattern emerges, the algorithm alerts researchers, who can then send a more targeted mission to investigate. This process is already yielding surprising results. In 2020, an AUV off the coast of Chile recorded a series of low-frequency pulses that did not correspond to any marine mammal in the region. Subsequent analysis suggested the source was a large, unknown animal, possibly a deep-sea fish or squid, moving at a depth of over 2,000 meters. The creature was never seen, but its acoustic signature was logged, a ghost in the machine of the ocean. Environmental DNA, or eDNA, is another tool that is reshaping the search for the unknown. Every creature in the ocean sheds cells, scales, and waste into the water, leaving behind a genetic trail that can be sampled and analyzed. By collecting water from the deep sea and sequencing the DNA it contains, scientists can identify the species that have passed through that area, even if they were never seen. This technique has already revealed the presence of cryptic species, animals that are nearly identical in appearance but genetically distinct. It has also been used to detect the elusive giant squid, Architeuthis dux, in waters where it was never previously recorded. The potential for eDNA to uncover a truly unknown animal is enormous. Consider a scenario where a water sample from the abyssal plain yields a sequence that does not match any known organism in the global genetic database. That sequence could represent a new species, a new genus, or even a new phylum, a discovery that would rewrite the tree of life. The ocean is a vast reservoir of genetic information, and eDNA is the key that is slowly unlocking it. The testimony of fishermen remains one of the most undervalued sources of scientific data. These men and women spend thousands of hours on the water, often in remote areas where research vessels rarely venture. They have seen things that do not make sense, creatures that rise from the depths and disappear before a camera can be raised. In the waters off Indonesia, fishermen have reported seeing a creature they call the ikan raja, a fish that is over 10 meters long with a red mane and a serpentine body. Scientists have speculated that this could be a type of giant oarfish, but oarfish are typically silver and do not have a mane. Another possibility is a giant ribbonfish, but these are rarely seen alive. The point is that the fishermen's accounts, when collected systematically, can guide the placement of scientific instruments. If a particular area produces multiple reports of a large unknown animal, it becomes a priority for AUV surveys and eDNA sampling. This collaborative approach, blending traditional knowledge with modern technology, is the most promising path forward. Future exploration will also require a shift in the way we think about the deep sea. The ocean is not a blank space to be filled with our fears and fantasies, but a complex ecosystem that operates on timescales and scales of size that are difficult for the human mind to grasp. A creature that is rarely seen may not be rare at all, but simply elusive, living in a different layer of water than our nets and cameras can reach. The giant squid was known to science for centuries only through the remains found in sperm whale stomachs and the occasional carcass washed ashore. It was not until 2004 that a team of Japanese scientists, led by Tsunemi Kubodera, captured the first images of a live giant squid in its natural habitat at a depth of 900 meters off the coast of Japan. This discovery was a reminder that patience and persistence are the only reliable currencies in deep-sea exploration. The same could be true for any number of creatures that haunt the margins of our knowledge, from the megamouth shark, first discovered in 1976, to the elusive colossal squid, which was not filmed alive until 2019. The role of citizen science is also expanding as more people gain access to underwater cameras and sonar devices. Submersible drones, once the preserve of military and research institutions, are now available to amateur explorers and documentary filmmakers. These devices can reach depths of several hundred meters, opening up the twilight zone to a new generation of observers. When a recreational diver captures footage of an unusual animal, it can be uploaded to databases like the Ocean Biogeographic Information System, where it is verified by experts. This democratization of exploration means that the next great discovery could come from a hobbyist in the Sea of Cortez or a fisherman in the Arctic. The ocean is vast, but our collective attention is growing, and with it, the chances of a chance encounter that changes everything. The emotional and psychological dimensions of these searches are often overlooked. The deep sea is a place of profound solitude, where the pressure of the water is matched only by the weight of the unknown. Explorers who descend into the abyss report a sense of awe and humility, a feeling that they are visitors in a world that does not belong to them. This mindset is essential for the future of ocean exploration. We must approach the deep sea not as a resource to be exploited, but as a wilderness to be respected. The animals that live there, whether known or unknown, are part of a delicate balance that sustains the entire planet. The carbon cycle, the oxygen we breathe, the climate we depend on, all are influenced by the deep ocean. To harm that system in the pursuit of discovery would be a profound betrayal of the very curiosity that drives us. The line between legend and discovery is not a fixed boundary, but a shifting frontier that moves with each new piece of evidence. The sea serpents of old may one day be identified as a species of giant eel, a deep-sea shark, or a creature that has no modern analog. Alternatively, they may remain in the realm of folklore, a reminder that the ocean will always hold a part of its mystery back. The explorer who seeks the truth must be prepared for both outcomes, the thrill of discovery and the acceptance of the unknown. The hum of the documentary continues, a steady background to the quiet contemplation of the viewer. The darkness of the deep sea is not an absence of light, but a presence of possibility. The answers are out there, and the explorers are still on their way, learning to see the ocean with new eyes. The ocean is patient, and it will wait for us to learn how to see it properly. The ocean is patient, and it will wait for us to learn how to see it properly. That patience is not a passive stillness, but an active withholding of its deepest secrets until we have developed the tools and the humility to receive them. Every unexplained sighting from the past, from the serpentine coils reported by the crew of the HMS Daedalus in 1848 to the mysterious blobs washed ashore in the 19th century, represents a challenge to our understanding. Each account is a fragment of a larger puzzle, a piece of data that science has not yet been able to integrate into a coherent picture. The witnesses were often experienced sailors, naturalists, or fishermen, individuals whose livelihoods depended on accurately reading the sea. Their reports are not easily dismissed as mere fantasy, for they carried the weight of professional observation. Yet the ocean is a place of optical illusions, of shadows cast by deep-dwelling creatures that have never been seen by human eyes. The phenomenon of bioluminescence, for example, can create elaborate trails of light that resemble the undulating body of a sea serpent. A school of squid or fish swimming in synchrony can produce a visual pattern that, from a distance, appears to be a single massive organism. Researchers have documented cases where large aggregations of eels, particularly the conger eel, have been mistaken for a single serpentine creature. The conger eel can reach lengths of over 3 meters, and when several of them coil together in a mating ball, the resulting shape can be highly suggestive. The deep sea is also home to the giant oarfish, a creature that can grow to over 8 meters long and is often cited as a likely source of sea serpent legends. Its elongated ribbon-like body, combined with its sinuous swimming motion, matches many historical descriptions. But the true explanation for many sightings may lie in creatures that remain entirely unknown to science. The deep ocean is the largest and least explored habitat on Earth, with an estimated 2/3 of its species yet to be described. The midwater zone, between the sunlit surface and the abyssal plain, is a vast, three-dimensional space where life takes forms that defy our terrestrial expectations. Future exploration will rely on new technologies that can observe this environment without disturbing it. Remotely operated vehicles, or ROVs, have already revealed a wealth of strange creatures, from the transparent jellyfish to the deep-sea anglerfish. But these vehicles are still limited by the need for a tethered cable and the high cost of deployment. The next generation of autonomous underwater vehicles, or AUVs, will be able to operate for months at a time, mapping the water column with sonar and capturing high-resolution video. One of the most promising methods for detecting unknown large animals is environmental DNA, or eDNA. Every creature in the ocean sheds tiny fragments of skin, scales, and waste into the water. By collecting water samples and analyzing the genetic material they contain, scientists can identify the species present in an area, even if those species are never seen. This technique has already been used to detect rare and elusive animals, such as the vaquita porpoise and the Greenland shark. In the future, eDNA surveys could be used to search for the genetic signatures of known sea serpent candidates, such as giant eels or unknown shark species. If a sample contains DNA that does not match any known species, it would provide strong evidence for the existence of a new, large animal. Another avenue of exploration is the use of long-term acoustic monitoring. The ocean is filled with sound, from the calls of whales to the crackling of shrimp. Many large animals produce distinctive sounds, and by deploying hydrophones over months or years, researchers can build a soundscape of the deep. Unexplained noises, such as the famous bloop detected in 1997, were initially thought to be a giant animal, but were later identified as the sound of ice cracking in Antarctica. Nevertheless, other acoustic anomalies remain unexplained, and future instruments with greater sensitivity could detect the vocalizations of creatures that have never been heard before. The deep sea is a realm of silence for human ears, but for the animals that live there, it is a world of constant communication and navigation. The future of exploration also depends on the development of new submersibles that can reach the deepest trenches without the limitations of current designs. The Mariana Trench has been visited only a handful of times, and each descent has revealed new species adapted to extreme pressure. The Hadal Zone, the region of the ocean below 6,000 meters, is the least explored environment on Earth. It is entirely possible that a large, serpentine creature could inhabit this zone, feeding on the carcasses of whales that sink to the abyssal plain. The pressure at those depths would crush a human submersible, But robotic vehicles made of new materials, such as ceramics or composites, could withstand the pressure and explore for extended periods. The first images of a Hadal sea serpent, if it exists, would revolutionize our understanding of life in the deep. Yet the search for sea serpents is not just about finding a single creature. It is about understanding the entire ecosystem of the deep ocean, a system that is increasingly threatened by human activity. Deep-sea mining, bottom trawling, and climate change are altering the ocean in ways that may destroy the very habitats where unknown species live. The future of exploration must be conducted with a commitment to conservation. Every ROV dive, every eDNA sample, every hydrophone deployment must be part of a larger effort to protect the ocean. The explorers of tomorrow will not be adventurers in the old sense, but scientists and engineers who work with the understanding that the ocean is a fragile, interconnected system. The sea serpents of legend may be real, but they are also symbols of the ocean's ability to inspire wonder and humility. The human brain is wired to see patterns even where none exist. This is why we perceive faces in clouds and serpents in the waves. The ancient mariners who reported sea monsters were not liars, but interpreters of a world they did not fully understand. Their stories were attempts to make sense of the vast alien realm that surrounded them. Today, we have the tools to test those stories, to separate the biological from the optical illusion. But we must also remain open to the possibility that some of the stories are true, that the ocean still holds creatures beyond our imagination. The quest for the sea serpent is a quest for the edge of our knowledge, a journey into the unknown that is as much about ourselves as it is about the deep. The documentary hums on, a steady rhythm of calm narration and ambient sound. The viewer drifts in a state of half-awareness, the images of the deep ocean flickering like dreams. The darkness of the screen is not empty, but filled with the potential of discovery. The next generation of submersibles is being designed in laboratories around the world, their blueprints waiting for funding and testing. The next eDNA survey is being planned, its water samples yet to be collected. The next unexplained sighting is already out there, waiting for a witness with a camera and a calm mind. The sea serpents will not be hunted, but discovered as we learn to see the ocean with new eyes. The ocean is patient, but it is also changing. The warming of the surface waters is driving species to deeper, cooler depths, altering the distribution of life. The deep-sea currents that carry nutrients and oxygen are shifting. The creatures that live in the abyss are adapted to a stable environment, and any change can be catastrophic. The future of exploration must be conducted with a sense of urgency, not for the sake of finding a mythical creature, but for the sake of understanding the ocean before it is too late. The sea serpent, if it exists, is a sentinel of the deep, an indicator of the health of the entire system. Its discovery would be a triumph of science, but its extinction would be a tragedy of neglect. The line between legend and discovery is not a fixed boundary, but a shifting frontier that moves with each new piece of evidence. The sea serpents of old may one day be identified as a species of giant eel, a deep-sea shark, or a creature that has no modern analog. Alternatively, they may remain in the realm of folklore, a reminder that the ocean will always hold a part of its mystery back. The explorer who seeks the truth must be prepared for both outcomes, the thrill of discovery and the acceptance of the unknown. The hum of the documentary continues, a steady background to the quiet contemplation of the viewer. The darkness of the deep sea is not an absence of light, but a presence of possibility. The answers are out there, and the explorers are still on their way, learning to see the ocean with new eyes. The ocean is patient, and it will wait for us to learn how to see it properly. The ancient sailor stands alone on the wooden deck, his hands resting on the worn rail that has known the touch of countless others before him. The ship groans softly beneath his feet, a living thing made of timber and tar, carrying him across a vast and unknowable expanse. Above him, the stars are scattered across the sky like grains of salt on a black cloth, each one a fixed point in a world that otherwise offers no certainty. Below him, the water is a mirror of darkness, a surface that reflects the starlight only to swallow it again a moment later. He stares into that dark water, and he knows that he is looking at something that will never yield its secrets. The surface of the ocean is a boundary, a thin membrane that separates the world of air and light from the world of water and shadow. The sailor sees his own face reflected in the blackness, a pale oval that floats on the shifting skin of the sea. He sees the stars flicker and dance, distorted by the gentle motion of the waves. But he knows that this reflection is a lie, a trick of the light that tells him nothing of what lies beneath. The surface conceals everything below, and it does so without effort, without malice, without any intention at all. It is simply the nature of the ocean to hide what it holds. The water he stares into is cold, and it is deep, and it is old. It has been here for longer than any human memory can reach, longer than the stories that his grandmother told him by the fire, longer than the songs that sailors sing to keep away the fear. This same water has touched the shores of every continent, has risen and fallen with the tides of countless moons, has carried the hulls of ships from ages long forgotten. The sailor does not know this, of course. He knows only that the sea is vast and that it is dark, and that he is very small upon it. The wind picks up and the ship leans into the swell, and the sailor tightens his grip on the rail. He hears the creak of the rigging, the slap of the sail, the hiss of the bow cutting through the waves. These are the sounds of his world, the only sounds he knows in this moment. But beneath these sounds, if he were to listen very carefully, he might hear something else. It is not a sound that reaches the ears, but rather a sensation that travels through the hull, through the wood, through the bones of the ship and into the bones of the man. It is a presence, a weight, a reminder that the ocean is not empty. The sailor does not see anything. He sees only the darkness of the water, the darkness of the sky, the darkness of the space between the stars. He has been at sea for many nights, and he has learned that the darkness is not a void, but a fullness, a thick and living thing that presses against the edges of his vision. He knows that there are things in that darkness, things that he cannot name and does not want to name. He has heard the stories, the whispers of other sailors who spoke of great shapes that moved beneath the waves, of coils that rose and fell like the breathing of some immense creature. He has dismissed those stories, told himself that they were fables born of loneliness and fear. But tonight, standing alone in the dark, he is not so sure. The stars wheel overhead, and the hours pass, and the sailor remains at the rail. He does not know what he is waiting for, only that he cannot look away. The water moves in long, slow swells, and the ship rises and falls with a rhythm that feels like the pulse of the earth itself. The sailor feels that rhythm in his own body, in the beating of his heart, in the rise and fall of his chest. He is a part of this rhythm, and the rhythm is a part of him. He is not separate from the ocean. He is a passenger on its surface, a visitor in its domain. The same water exists today. The same darkness exists. The ocean that the ancient sailor stared into is the same ocean that stretches out beneath the modern world, beneath the ships of steel and the cables of communication, beneath the cities that line the coasts and the lights that burn through the night. The surface still conceals everything below. The darkness still holds its secrets. Nothing has changed. The science of the present has mapped the ocean floor, has measured the depths, has cataloged the creatures that live in the abyss. But the mystery remains. The darkness remains. The water remains. And so we return to that image, the image of the sailor on the wooden ship at night, staring into the black water. It is an image that has repeated itself countless times over the centuries, across every ocean, under every sky. It is the image of a human being confronting the unknown, not with instruments or theories, but with nothing more than his own eyes and his own breath. He does not know what he is looking at. He does not know what he is looking for. He only knows that he must look. The night deepens, and the sailor's eyes grow tired. He blinks, and the stars swim in the darkness. He blinks again, and the darkness seems to shift. He thinks he sees something, a shape, a movement, a change in the quality of the blackness just beneath the surface. It is not a shape he can recognize. It is not a shape that has a name. It is simply a disturbance in the fabric of the water, a ripple that does not come from the wind. He holds his breath, and he watches. The shape moves slowly, without hurry, without direction that the sailor can discern. It is a long, dark form that glides beneath the surface, deeper than the reach of the starlight, deeper than the reach of any human gaze. It does not rise to the surface. It does not reveal itself. It simply moves, a patient and unhurried presence in the vast and silent world below. The sailor watches until the shape is gone, until the water is once again nothing but darkness, until he is left alone with the stars and the ship and the endless night. He does not speak. He does not move. He stands at the rail and he stares into the water, and he knows that something is there, something that has always been there, something that will always be there. The ocean is not empty. The darkness is not empty. And the sailor, standing on his wooden ship, is a witness to a truth that cannot be spoken, a truth that can only be felt in the quiet of the night, in the stillness of the sea, in the patient and unhurried movement of something far below. The wind dies down, and the ship settles into a gentle drift. The stars continue their slow circuit across the sky. The sailor remains at the rail, his eyes fixed on the water, his mind empty of words, full of the vast and silent presence that lies beneath. He does not try to understand. He does not try to name. He only watches, and he waits. And the night goes on, and the ocean goes on, and the darkness goes on, patient and unhurried, patient and unhurried, patient and unhurried. And far below the surface, in the deep and the cold and the dark, something moves. It moves without sound, without light, without any awareness of the sailor above. It moves through the water as though the water is a part of it, as though it has always been moving and will always move. It is a shape without form, a presence without intention, a motion without purpose. It is simply there, in the place where the light does not reach, in the place where the silence is absolute. It moves, and it is patient. It moves, and it is unhurried. It moves, and the ocean does not notice. The sailor does not see. The stars do not care. But the movement continues, deep and slow and steady, a quiet pulse in the heart of the darkness. The sailor on the ship, the sailor of 1,000 years ago, the sailor of today, the sailor of every night that has ever been, stands at the rail and stares into the water. He does not know what he will see. He does not know what he will find. But he knows that he will keep looking, that he will keep watching, that he will keep standing in the dark, alone with the ocean and the stars and the patient, unhurried movement far below. The night is long, the water is deep, the darkness is old, and something moves far below the surface, in the dark, patient, and unhurried. The sailor remains at the rail, his hands resting on the cold wood, the salt crust forming a fine powder beneath his fingers. The ship groans softly, a sound like a living thing breathing in the dark, and the water laps against the hull with a rhythm that has no beginning and no end. Far below, the movement continues, a slow turning of something vast and shapeless, a current that does not flow from any shore and does not return to any source. The sailor cannot name it, cannot describe it, cannot even be certain that it is real. But the weight of his own gaze, the ache in his eyes from staring into the endless black, tells him that something is there, waiting in the place where the water becomes absolute night. The stars above have shifted, slowly wheeling across the dome of the sky as the ship drifts on its invisible path. The sailor does not count the hours, does not measure the distance, does not track the constellations in their slow march. He only watches the water, the way the moonlight catches the crest of a wave and then vanishes, the way the darkness seems to breathe, to expand and contract with the swell of the deep. The movement below is not a ripple, not a flash, not a sudden disturbance. It is a steadiness, a presence that has been there since before the first sailor ever set foot on a wooden deck, since before the first fish swam in the ancient seas, since before the continents themselves took shape from the cooling earth. The sailor thinks of the old stories, the tales whispered in the forecastle, the legends of great serpents and twisting monsters that could swallow a ship whole. But those stories were born from fear, from the need to give a name to the formless, a face to the unseen. What the sailor feels now is not fear, not quite. It is something older, something quieter, a recognition that the deep does not need to be named, does not need to be understood. It simply is, and it moves, and the sailor is a tiny point of light on a vast and endless sea, a flicker of awareness in a universe of darkness. The water below is not a single surface but 1,000 layers, each one colder and darker than the last, each one hiding its own secret currents and slow drift of particles. The sailor imagines the pressure building, the weight of the ocean pressing down, the silence thickening until it becomes a physical thing, a blanket of stillness that no sound can penetrate. And in that pressure, in that silence, the movement continues, a slow and patient turning, a pulse that does not quicken and does not slow, a rhythm that belongs only to the deep. The ship rises and falls on the gentle swell, and the sailor rises and falls with it, his body moving in time with the water, his thoughts drifting like the clouds that pass overhead. The clouds are thin, wispy, barely visible against the paler stars, and they cast no shadow on the sea. The sailor watches them, then looks back down, and the water is still there, dark and patient, waiting for nothing, expecting nothing. The movement below is not a hunt, not a search, not a purpose. It is simply the way the deep exists, the way it has always existed, and the way it will always exist, long after the sailor has gone, long after the ship has rotted and sunk, long after the stars themselves have burned out and faded. The sailor does not know how long he has stood there. Time has become a strange thing, a fluid that stretches and contracts, that slips away and then returns. The moon has moved across the sky, the stars have shifted, the wind has changed direction, but the sailor remains, his eyes fixed on the water, his mind empty of everything except the slow, steady rhythm of the deep. The movement below is not a creature, not a monster, not a myth. It is a pattern, a breath, a heartbeat that belongs to the ocean itself, a reminder that the world is not a place of solid ground and clear boundaries, but a place of depths and shadows and endless, patient motion. The sailor feels a cool breeze on his face, carrying the scent of salt and something else, something faint and mineral, like the smell of wet stone after a rain. The breeze passes, and the night is still again, the air heavy with the moisture of the sea. The sailor closes his eyes for a moment, and in the darkness behind his lids, he sees the same movement, the same slow turning, the same patient pulse. It is not a vision, not a dream, but a memory of the deep, a rhythm that has imprinted itself on his senses, that will stay with him long after he returns to shore, long after he sleeps in a bed that does not rock, long after he forgets the name of the ship and the date of the voyage. When he opens his eyes again, the water is unchanged. The stars are still there, the moon still hangs low on the horizon, and the ship still rises and falls with the same gentle motion. The movement below is still there, deep and slow and steady, a presence that does not demand attention, does not ask for recognition, but simply exists in the place where the light does not reach, in the place where the silence is absolute. The sailor does not try to understand it, does not try to explain it, does not try to give it a name. He only watches, and the watching becomes a kind of prayer, a quiet communion with the darkness, a recognition that the deep is not a void, but a fullness of motion and time and patience. The ship sails on, and the sailor stands at the rail, and the night stretches out before him, infinite and ancient, a sea of stars above and a sea of darkness below. The movement continues far beneath the surface, in the cold and the pressure and the absolute silence, a movement that has no beginning and no end, a movement that is the only constant in a world of change, a movement that is the ocean itself, breathing in the dark, patient and unhurried, waiting for nothing, expecting nothing, simply moving, always moving, forever moving, in the place where the light does not reach, in the place where the silence is absolute. The sailor does not see it, does not hear it, does not touch it, but he knows it is there, and that knowledge is enough to keep him standing at the rail, alone with the stars and the water and the patient, unhurried pulse of the deep. The night is long, and the water is deep, and the darkness is old, and the movement continues far below the surface, in the dark, patient and unhurried, a quiet pulse in the heart of the darkness, a pulse that does not falter, does not pause, does not end. The sailor stands, and the ship drifts, and the stars wheel overhead, and the ocean breathes, and the movement goes on, deep and slow and steady, a presence without form, a motion without purpose, a shape without intention, simply there, in the place where the light does not reach, in the place where the silence is absolute, always moving, always patient, always unhurried, and the night stretches on, endless and ancient. And the sailor watches, and the deep watches back. And nothing is said, nothing is known, nothing is understood, but the movement continues, and the ocean does not notice, and the sailor does not see, and the stars do not care, but the movement continues, deep and slow and steady, a quiet pulse in the heart of the darkness, a pulse that has always been there, that will always be there, a pulse that is the only truth in the vast and silent deep, a pulse that is the ocean itself, breathing in the dark, patient and unhurried, forever moving, forever waiting, forever there, in the place where the light does not reach, in the place where the silence is absolute. The sailor remains at the rail, fingers resting on the cold wood, eyes fixed on the black horizon where the sky meets the sea, in a line that is not a line. The air is damp and thick, carrying the scent of salt and something older, something that cannot be named, a presence that lingers in the stillness of the night. The ship rises and falls with a rhythm that is almost musical, a slow breathing of the hull against the surface, and the sound of water lapping against the planks is a whisper that never quite forms words. There is no moon, no stars visible now, only the deep above and the deep below, two mirrors of the same darkness, one reflecting the other in a symmetry that seems impossible, yet is there, undeniable, unspoken. The ocean stretches in every direction, a flat expanse of black that holds no boundary, no landmark, no point of reference to anchor the gaze. The sailor's eyes adjust to the absence of light, and slowly, shapes begin to emerge from the void, not shapes that can be called real, but suggestions of shapes, folds of darkness that shift and dissolve as soon as they are seen. It is as if the sea itself is breathing these forms into existence, brief and fleeting, a trick of the eye or a gift of the deep, a moment of presence that is gone before the mind can grasp it. The water moves in long, slow swells, each one a gentle rise and fall, a pulse that travels from somewhere far away, from the heart of the ocean, and arrives here, at this ship, at this moment, carrying nothing but the memory of distance. The wind picks up, then dies down, a soft sigh that brushes across the sailor's face, carrying the cold of the deep and the warmth of the body, a contrast that is felt but not understood. The ship creaks, a low groan from the timbers, a sound that is almost alive, a voice that speaks of wood and water and the long journey they have shared. The sailor listens, not with the ears, but with the skin, with the bones, with the breath that moves in and out, slow and steady, a rhythm that matches the swell, that matches the pulse of the sea itself. There is no thought now, only sensation, only the feeling of being here, of being part of this moment, of being suspended in the vastness of the dark. The water is not still, even when it seems still, for the deep is always moving, always shifting, a constant dance of currents that are too slow to be seen, too deep to be felt, yet they are there beneath the surface, a hidden world of motion that never stops. The sailor imagines the water below, layers upon layers of darkness, each one colder and denser than the last, stretching down into a realm where light has never reached, where pressure is immense, where silence is the only sound. The imagination is not a fact, but it is an image, a picture of the deep that forms in the mind, a picture that is as real as the stars that are hidden, as real as the land that is far away, as real as the ship that floats on the surface of this endless sea. The night deepens, and the air grows colder, and the sailor feels the chill creep through the layers of clothing, a slow embrace that is neither welcome nor unwelcome, simply a part of the night. The breath becomes visible, a small cloud of white that hangs in the air for a moment before dissolving into the darkness, a ghost of warmth that is gone almost as soon as it appears. The ship rocks gently, a cradle of wood and water, a motion that is familiar now, a motion that has become part of the body, part of the rhythm of the night. The sailor's eyes grow heavy, but the gaze does not waver, for the deep holds a fascination that is beyond understanding, a pull that is stronger than sleep, stronger than the need to rest. The ocean is not a thing to be known, but a presence to be felt, a vastness that surrounds the ship, that holds the ship, that carries the ship through the darkness, with a patience that is ancient and absolute. The water is cold, but the cold is not a sensation. It is a truth, a fact of the deep that is as constant as the darkness, as constant as the silence. The sailor's hand moves from the rail, touches the shoulder, rubs the arm, a small gesture of warmth against the cold, a gesture that is forgotten as soon as it is made. The ship moves on, and the night moves on, and the ocean moves on, and the sailor is still, watching, waiting, not for anything, but for the sake of watching, for the sake of being present in this moment of absolute stillness. The stars that were hidden are now visible again, a few faint points of light that appear through a break in the clouds, a scattered handful of diamonds on a black velvet sky. The sailor looks up and the stars look back, but there is no connection, no meaning, only the distance that separates them, the light that has traveled for years to reach this small point in the vastness. The ship is a speck, a tiny fragment of wood and metal on a sea that is endless, a sea that has no beginning and no end, a sea that is the same as it has always been, unchanged, unchanging, a constant in a world of flux. The sailor feels the weight of this, not as a burden, but as a release, a letting go of the need to understand, a surrender to the simple fact of being here, now, in this moment of darkness. The deep below is not empty, though it appears empty, for the darkness is a veil that hides what is there, what has always been there, what will always be there. The water is filled with movement, with life, with the slow drift of creatures that are never seen, that exist in the spaces between the light, in the depths where the sun's rays never reach. The sailor does not see them, but senses them, a presence that is not felt with the hands, but with the imagination, a presence that is as real as the water that surrounds the ship, as real as the cold that seeps into the bones. The night is full of these unseen presences, these shadows that are not shadows, these forms that are not forms, these beings that move in the silence, that live in the silence, that are part of the silence. The ship drifts, not with direction, but with the current, a slow, aimless movement that carries it across the face of the sea, a journey that has no destination, no purpose, only the motion itself. The sailor feels the drift, the subtle shift of the deck beneath the feet, the change in the angle of the stars, the slow turn of the world that is happening without any force, without any will. The ocean is the guide. The ocean is the path. The ocean is the destination, and the ship is a leaf on the surface, carried by the wind and the water, a part of the great cycle that never ends. The sailor accepts this, not with resignation, but with peace, a peace that comes from letting go, from surrendering to the rhythm of the deep. The waves are gentle now, no longer the swells of the open sea, but a softer roll, a quieter motion, as if the ocean itself is settling into a rest, a calm that is deeper than stillness. The water laps against the hull, a sound that is like a heartbeat, a steady pulse that is the only sound in the world, the only sound that matters. The sailor listens, and the listening becomes a meditation, a focus on the sound, on the feel, on the presence of the water, the deep, the dark. The breath slows, and the mind slows, and the body becomes a part of the ship, a part of the sea, a part of the night, a part of the vastness that is all around, that is inside, that is everything. The darkness is not a void, but a presence, a fullness that is felt in the air, in the water, in the skin, in the bones. The sailor's eyes are open, but they see nothing, for there is nothing to see. Only the blackness that is the same above and below. A blackness that is absolute, that is complete. That is the truth of the deep. The ship moves, and the night moves, and the stars move, and the sailor is still, a point of stillness in the endless motion, a point of silence in the endless sound, a point of presence in the endless absence. The ocean breathes, and the sailor breathes, and the two breaths become one, a single rhythm, a single pulse, a single movement that is the heart of the darkness. The cold deepens, and the sailor pulls the coat tighter, a small movement that is a gesture of self, of the body, of the warmth that is inside, a warmth that is not lost, but held, a warmth that is the only light in this world of darkness. The ship creaks again, a sound that is like a sigh, a sound that is the ship's voice, a sound that speaks of the journey, of the miles, of the time that has passed, of the time that is yet to come. The sailor does not think of time, does not think of distance, does not think of anything but the moment that is eternal, the moment that is the only thing that is real. The deep is patient, and the sailor is patient, and the patience is a gift of the night, a gift of the sea, a gift of the silence that is absolute. The water is dark, but the darkness is not a color. It is a quality, a texture, a feeling that is beyond the senses, beyond the mind, beyond the words that try to describe it. The sailor knows this, knows that the darkness is not to be understood, but to be experienced, to be felt, to be accepted as a part of the world, a part of the self, a part of the deep that is always there, always waiting, always present. The ship floats, and the sailor rests, not in sleep, but in a waking dream, a state of being that is between the worlds, between the light and the dark, between the known and the unknown. The ocean is the boundary. The ocean is the bridge. The ocean is the place where all things meet, and the sailor is there, in the middle, in the heart of the deep. The wind picks up again, a soft breath that carries the scent of the sea, the scent of salt and life and death and time, all mingled together in a single fragrance that is the scent of the ocean itself. The sailor breathes it in, and the breath is a gift of the night, a gift of the deep, a gift that is as simple as it is profound. The ship moves on, and the stars wheel overhead, and the ocean breathes, and the sailor is there, a witness to the eternal, a witness to the infinite, a witness to the silence that is absolute, a witness to the movement that does not falter, that does not pause, that does not end. The deep is there, and the sailor is there, and the two are one, in the place where the light does not reach, in the place where the silence is absolute, in the place where the pulse is the only truth, the pulse that is the ocean itself, breathing in the dark, patient and unhurried, forever moving, forever waiting, forever there.